Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячий хотар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння, різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Світ
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 765 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And things are heating up with Poland for sure today. And welcome back.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, as Poland has revoked the conventional arms treaty that they were a part of. They have also said that war is inevitable at this point, according to the Prime Minister Donald Tusk. We have also seen Russian drones colliding with the territory of Romania, deep behind Romanian border lines, and we've also seen many other major things happening today, both inside the Russian Federation and a large amount of stuff that happened on the Ukrainian front lines today. Probably one of the heaviest instances of frontline action that has been seen over weeks, if not months, of this war so far. We have a lot to cover tonight, and not only that, the Free Russian Army, which we have a little bit of news on, although the news has become sparse, although they are still fighting that war. There is a endless amount to talk about tonight. And we're, of course, going to be moving y'all into one of the first and major things that we got to see from today, which was the Polish revocation of the Treaty of Conventional Armed Forces. This is a fairly big deal. This treaty is one that pretty much every single European nation is in, and it pretty much, well, to try and explain it the best I can, it pretty much required that the Polish government tell everyone else in Europe, including the Russians, where their armed forces were, how big they were, and what they were doing inside of Poland and where they may be heading. That was to make sure that tensions remained low inside of Europe, so that way everyone knew that no other country nearby was trying to launch some kind of a full-scale invasion or was conducting some sort of a military buildup in preparation for that. That is what that treaty was really about, was making sure the tensions remained low in Europe. But it appears that the Polish now have complete lack of faith in other countries such as Russia and Belarus, ensuring that they will be able to keep the peace on their end, and they have now removed themselves from the treaty on conventional armed forces. This means from this point onward, the Polish are not going to be reporting their armed forces size or location to anyone, even inside of NATO. Polish armed forces are going to be moving throughout Poland as they normally would have, but they're going to be doing it without notifying anyone else. This means a great deal of things when you actually look at it in reality. This means that if the Polish felt it was necessary, they could begin to funnel an incredibly large amount of Polish forces up into the area around the Suwalki Gap and not notify the Russians or the Belarusians, making sure that they are completely in the dark about their force movements inside of Poland, and making sure that they are ready for whatever they think the Russians may be planning or may be conducting here in the near future. There's also many other things that this helps out with in the big picture. For example, air defense forces, which are one of the most crucial forces on the ground, were constantly being notified where they were inside of Poland and what they were doing at the time. Now that they've revoked the treaty, or they've really dropped out of the treaty, this means that they do not have to notify the Russians or the Belarusians where their air defense batteries are at the moment. This once again ensures that Polish air defenses, in the event of a conventional war, are not immediately targeted and destroyed, or a larger part of them, maybe the majority of their air defense forces, are destroyed at the very first hours of a war because the Russians knew exactly where they were. This seems to be more of a defensive measure than an offensive one by the Polish, but it's once again being spurred by the general distrust of Eastern European countries against the Russians and the Belarusians. We're once again seeing that this general distrust is leading the Baltic states to expel Russian diplomats, a very strong statement as far as diplomatic statements go, and we're also seeing that the Polish have done something similar and are not only doing that, but they are preparing for what appears to be a full-on conventional war. Not only that, we know that they're not just looking like they're preparing for what they believe is going to be a full-on conventional war. We got a statement today from the Prime Minister of Poland, Donald Tusk, in a direct quote, pretty much showing that they believe war is inevitable on the face of Europe. And we're going to be talking about that in this little quote right here. The direct quote that Politico got today from the Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, was, "I don't want to scare anyone, but war is no longer a concept from the past." Donald Tusk then went on after this statement to talk about how Russia is looking to be poising itself for a major conventional war inside of Europe, and a lot of European countries are not ready for this. He strongly urged that many people, as many people as possible inside of other countries in Europe, urge their governments to prepare for war and to massively increase their military spending and also massively increase their recruitment goals and quotas, so that way the armed forces of Europe inside the NATO alliance are built up large enough that at the very onset of a conventional war, such as the one we may be seeing about to unfold, Europe will be ready. Europe will not be caught off guard in trying to figure out what they need to do next or how to react to the Russians. It'll more so be reacting to the Russians immediately, and they have everything planned out. This is something that is a fairly big deal. The Polish are one of the largest countries in Europe as far as their economy is concerned, outside of the major three of France, Germany, and the United Kingdom. And not only that, they have one of the largest armed forces in Europe right now, one of the largest ground armies, one of the largest air forces. They don't necessarily have the largest navy. They're actually a little bit farther down the list. But beyond that, they are one of the largest armed forces inside of Europe. And we're seeing that the Polish are not stepping down their defense spending. They're actually rapidly increasing it. Right now, at this very moment, Polish defense spending makes up 3.5% of their annual GDP, which is 150% more. Oh, well, actually, it's not 150%. It's actually 75% more than the minimum 2% GDP spending goals or quotas that NATO tries to lay out and encourage other countries to follow. Many other countries do not get close to meeting that 2% goal. The Germans are at around 1.6, 1.7%. The British are around 1.8. The French are around 1.6. The Polish are at 3.5. They are a massive military spender, and not only that, they are still continuing to expand and grow their armed forces as we're speaking right now, and it's planned to become the largest at its peak in 2025. Many people are believing that the Polish may have a crystal ball into the future, as the Polish government is starting to operate with this level of assuredness and efficiency that only comes from having a very clear picture of what the future may hold. Poland has been one of the countries that at the beginning of the war was one of the most eager to try and get involved directly on the war in Ukraine. But as the war has continued to go on, we're seeing that they are starting to shift their focus from wanting to get involved inside of Ukraine in a direct way to getting ready to defend themselves from what they're saying is most likely going to be a massive onslaught of a Russian offensive throughout the entirety of Eastern Europe. Many people have been saying that maybe the Polish actually know what they're talking about here, or maybe they're acting with an overabundance of precautions, and it just looks like they know what's going to be happening in the future. Regardless, so many people have so many different inputs on the Polish. A lot of people think that they're an incredible country with an amazing armed force, and that their government is fairly good at predicting what Eastern Europe will look like, at least within the next few years. Some people believe that they're a little bit too cautious and they freak out really the slightest sight of anything. So we have a lot of people who think many different things about the Poles, but I believe that Matthew may have an interesting statement about this, because this is something that we were actually talking about a lot behind the scenes, kind of had a conversation about before we got on here live, and we were talking about what do the Polish possibly know, or if they know anything at all. And Matthew, what do you think the Polish know, if anything, for that matter?
All right, so we asked the audience, what are your thoughts about Poland suspending the major arms treaty with Russia and declaring the start of the so-called pre-war era in Europe? 62% said Poland knows war is coming down the pipeline. 30% said Poland is simply taking precautions. 5% said Poland is grandstanding and no war. And 4% were undecided. And on this one, I think Poland knows war is coming. The statements that are being made by the leadership in Poland indicate that they have concrete intelligence that something is going to be happening in the next couple of years, if not sooner than that, between Russia and the West. And to be perfectly honest, the indicators are showing up to indicate that is the case. So I think it's very wise to go ahead and start preparing for that. And also, to be honest with you, that treaty that Poland was in, the European Arms Treaty, that was really a dumb treaty to begin with, and they really didn't need to be in it in the first place, in my opinion. So, it was a long time coming to back out of that. So to me, it's a good thing. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that it is a fairly actually concerning thing in my opinion, and I'll explain why. The point of the treaty, much like the SALT treaties, which I believe, if I'm correct, the SALT treaties are the nuclear treaties that force every nuclear power in the world to share the exact locations of their nuclear weapons at any given time and let the others know where they are and what they're aimed at or what their targets are going to be. that was an attempt to try and decrease tensions around the world, because instead of having this massive amount of uncertainty about what would happen, everyone knew what would actually happen completely from beginning to end. And that actually helped a lot in decreasing nuclear tensions. The same thing was meant with the Treaty of Conventional Armed Forces. It was supposed to be a joint agreement by everyone in Europe, including the Russians and Belarusians, to share the locations of their armed forces, so that way countries were not concerned about some kind of a, pretty much a absolute bat crap insane attack occurring on them overnight, because they didn't know that there was a massive armed forces buildup along their borders. The fact that the Polish withdrew from such a treaty that was meant to keep tensions low in Europe is showing that they believe that tensions are so high at this point, they may as well be right next to being in a full-on conventional war. And so the treaty is completely pointless at this point in the mind of the Poles. So going off of that kind of a concept and that kind of a mindset, this is actually very concerning. Not on the Polish end, making it look like they're starting a war. This is very concerning because they believe that the treaty is so pointless at this point because they may as well be in a war or nearly into a war at this point. So I would have to say this is actually quite concerning in my opinion, and hopefully we will not see that war is coming, but it looks like many countries inside of Europe are fairly certain that war is coming. We're hearing that France is saying, has been saying that heavily. We're also hearing the Polish now say that. We're also hearing the Baltic states say that. We've been hearing some defense ministers from some of the Scandinavian countries saying things like this over the past few weeks. So it's becoming very clear to me that the Polish apparently know that war is coming, and while that's unfortunate, hopefully we can see that everyone prepares as best as they possibly can for what may be coming in the future. We already know that the Polish armed forces will fare incredibly well. They do have 200,000 active personnel inside of their armed forces, distributed amongst the land forces, the air force, the navy, the special forces, and the territorial defense forces, which make up the reserve personnel of the Polish armed forces. And if you include the territorial defense forces of Poland into their armed forces size, it actually makes the Polish armed forces a 550,000 strong armed force. Incredibly large. It's actually larger than the amount of Ukrainian soldiers that are currently on the front line inside of Ukraine. So it's an incredibly large number to start off with early on. To also put that in perspective, including the reservists of the Polish armed forces, that means that the Polish army is around half the size of the U.S. armed forces, not including our own reservists. So going off of that, that is an incredibly large armed force, and I'd have to say that the Polish would be one of the most prepared and ready to go. If we actually look at some of the Polish armed forces, for example, the land forces, which I believe we can get a list of their equipment, and let me see if we can, and here we go. I'll show y'all that they're not an antiquated force. They're actually incredibly modern and have been spending a lot of time modernizing their armed forces. But let me move on down here to their rifles. Of course, they use mostly AKMs and such things as that, and the Grot, which is a modular rifle. You can get it either in a bullpup or in a normal standard rifle. But beyond that, this is pretty much just a CZ Pren, to try and explain that the best I can. But moving on from that, and a little bit farther on down, it's most important for us to get to the armored vehicles. And I'm trying to find it really quickly, because you'll actually see that they have a fairly impressive amount of armored vehicles. They have a large amount of K2 Panthers from South Korea. This is actually a Polish K2 Panther, not a South Korean one. We can also see that they have a decent amount of M1 Abrams, specifically, I believe, the M1A1 or the M1A2. They also have a decent amount of Leopard 2s as well, and on top of that, they then have their classic mix of PT-91 Torties, which is a heavily upgraded T-72, and some T-72s. This one is in a museum. This is not the way the T-72s that are currently in Polish service look at all. And a decent amount of these have been relegated to training schools and are used to help to train the next generation of tankers inside of the Polish Republic. But beyond that, however, they have an incredibly well-kitted modern force. Not only that, but their ATGMs are also fairly good as well. They have 680 Javelin missile launchers, or anti-tank guided missile launchers. They also have 3,700 spikes. These are, interesting enough, actually a joint venture in between Israel and Poland to try and produce an anti-tank system, and it ended up doing fairly all right. The Polish have thousands of these things, and as you all may know, Anti-tank guided missile systems like these, much like the Stugna, have been a massive benefit for the Ukrainian armed forces and also greatly reduced the amount of casualties that AT operators suffer during the war. This means that the Polish have a very strong anti-tank presence, not only in the armor itself, but also in the anti-armor role in the form of ATGMs. On top of that, they also have a very impressive artillery force. They are planning, and this is the plan in the next few years, to have almost 800 K9 Thunders, which are a South Korean SPG, in service with the Polish armed forces, one of the largest numbers in the world. They also have around 170 Crabs that are currently in service right now. You can see one of those right here, and these have also been provided to Ukraine. Not only that, they also have a decent amount of Dana SPGs, which are very nice. We've already seen those in service in Ukraine a lot. And then they have the 2S1 Gadzivka, which is a older Soviet vintage SPG, and they also have the M120 rack, and we actually got to see one of these in service today, and I gotta say, that is a nice rack right there. These things are 100... These things are 120mm mobile mortar systems based off of the Rosmac APC that are able to provide a heavy amount of supporting firepower for the Polish forces that are in the field, and right now for Ukrainian forces that are on the front lines inside of southeastern Ukraine. But moving on from that, they also have an unbelievable amount of MLRSs. They're planning on having 288 K239 Chunmus, which are a South Korean MLRS. You can see this one right here. And I also like the lobster, rock lobster. Moving on from that, we can also see that they have a plan. Well, they're planning. They have 18 of them right now, but they're planning by 2025 to have 506 M142 HIMARS in the Polish Armed Forces, which will be one of the largest MLRS forces in the world made of HIMARS. In fact, it may be the largest right behind the United States. May even be larger than the United States. Someone fact-check me on that. We can also see that they have a whole bunch of standard MLRSs of the 122mm variety, pretty much spanning around 150 of them. So that's an incredibly large number of unguided MLRSs to work off of right there. They then also have an unbelievable number of armored vehicles. They're planning on having 1,000 of these, which are called the Borsuk, which is a brand new kind of armored personnel carrier, very similar in ability to the M2 Bradley, pretty much sharing the exact same main gun and also having a tandem ATGM mount. I believe it's a TOW 2 mount or maybe a Spike ATGM mount. I'm not exactly sure, but they are planning on about having a 1,000 of these by the end of 2026 or 2027. They also currently have...
I'm curious about this. How much more ready is Poland to fight right now if another world war were to break out at this moment compared to how they were ready to fight back when Nazi Germany was going into Poland? Were they more prepared then or now or about equal?
They're going to be far more prepared now than they were back then because the Polish armed forces at the time in World War II in 1939 were not that well equipped. They were... I'm trying to think about the best way to explain it. I'd have to go back and show like the equipment that they had. They didn't really have a modernized air force. They didn't really have a modernized ground force. It would have been great if it was the 1920s, but the late 1920s. But by then it was the late 1930s, and weapons were making massive leaps and bounds over short spans of time back then. Even like right now, they're making massive leaps even currently. So by the time the late 1930s came around, there was no way in hell that they were as prepared as what they would be right now if a world war broke out. And not only that, Matthew, but getting back into these numbers, these are unbelievable numbers right here. They have 359 Rosamac APCs. These are a fairly new wheeled armored personnel carrier, once again sharing the 25mm Bushmaster that the Bradley has. And they have a unbelievable, and these are going to be replaced in the future by the Borsuk, or they may even be kept in service as reserve vehicles if a world war was to break out, but they have almost 1,300 BMP-1s.
They've got some modern vehicles. Like their whole military seems extremely modern, and they're kitted out. But my point by asking if they were more prepared now than back during World War II is because I think Poland, with their history of war and being invaded by Nazi Germany, I think that's why they're taking the threat so seriously compared to other European countries. They don't want to repeat the same mistake as back then, and they want to make sure this time not only are they prepared, but this time they're overly prepared, so that way they don't encounter the same problem of being invaded and also occupied as they had back in the day.
And I would have to agree with you. And also, it's not just what happened in World War II with the invasion of Nazi Germany. What happened afterwards was also considered a stain on Polish history, as Soviet forces rolled in and then installed a communist puppet government that would rule Poland up until the very late 1980s, around 1989. Then that's when the solidarity movement was finally able to peacefully take control of power in Poland and was finally able to bring about a democracy and a Polish state that the Polish people were happy with. Up until then, pretty much everyone in Poland hated living in Poland because it was the People's Republic of Poland, or the PRP, and it was not a fun time for anyone in Poland during that moment. Actually, that's something that I would love to make a long-form documentary on, is the modern history of Poland from its original inception as a modern state, not talking about their historical state of Polish Lithuania or any preceding state such as that, but talking about modern Poland from its creation in 1917 with the fall of the Russian Empire and also the collapse of the German Empire, and up into the present day, because it's actually a very interesting history and explains a lot about Eastern European politics and diplomacy and how that has worked into the modern day. It would actually be a very interesting thing to go into. But not only that, Matthew, they have a lot. I mean, it's like, I'm not going to go through the entire list. I'm going to speed it up a little bit. But they have 300 cougars. I mean, Fort Benning doesn't even have that many cougars, Matthew. And I mean, they have a lot, like, if you know what I mean. But they also
they've got those nice ones too. I like that, like older style like that. That's not a newer one, is it?
No, I think this is one of the older model cougars. One of those. You know what? We're just gonna end the jokes right there. But moving on,
Yeah. Man, it's getting wild.
we also got to see. They also have around 85 Oshkosh M ATVs, the pickup truck version that you see right here. The one that I showed you, Matthew, the Air Force security one that was on the back of that flatbed.
Yeah, those are super nice in person. Extremely like taller in person than they are on camera.
Yes, I would have to say so. They are huge. They also have some armored car, the Humvees, stuff like that. Not really many of them. They also have Humvees mounted with tows. They have 18 of these, not really that many. And they also don't have tows. They have Spike ATGMs instead. The Poles love the Spike. But it's time for us to move on into the air defense systems, because these are some of the most important that we can talk about as far as the ground forces go. The ground forces are, of course, incredible as far as the armor, the artillery, and the armored vehicles go, and also the small arms and everything else. But one of the most important things about the ground forces is the air defense, or the Air Force. If the Air Force is large enough, air defense doesn't really matter, and it doesn't have to be integrated into the ground forces. But if the Air Force is not able to deal with the issue at hand, then the ground forces have to have a way to defend themselves. And they are planning on having around 23 Naru batteries, or around 138 launchers in service by the time of 2027. This is what a Naru looks like, and I'm actually going to get you all a little bit more information on this. We've looked at this before, but to try and get you all the best info I can about this system, it appears that it's going to have a planned range, a maximum range of around 62 miles, around 30 to 40 miles short of the Patriot's maximum range for the PAC-2 missile. It also will be able to pretty much do the exact same thing as the Patriot within that 62-mile distance, and the Poles are planning on having 23 batteries, which is enough to protect the entirety of Polish airspace probably 2 times over. Let me go back to the Polish Armed Forces structure and go get their list, because I just clicked off of it by accident, so let me go back and grab that, and let's see here. List of equipment of the Polish Land Forces. So here we go. We're back here again, and so let me scroll all the way down to where we were, which was at the air defense. They also are planning on having 2 batteries of SHORAD systems. They're also going to be having 77 POPRADs, which are just these mobile Piorin launchers. They're pretty much the Polish version of an M998 Avenger system that would have been used in the U.S. Army, which is pretty impressive stuff. These aren't going to be maximum range kinds of air defense systems. These are more closer to the front lines, attempting to shoot down helicopters and also aircraft that are flying incredibly close to the front lines in the active combat area. They also have 64 OSAs, a Soviet vintage air defense system, and they also have 20 Kubes. Yeah, and then they have the Kube, which is probably one of the goofiest looking air defense systems out there, based off of the hull of a ZSU-23 Shilka. But beyond that, then they have your normal amount of air defense. They have some Shilkas right here. I believe they have like 20 of these things. They also have a load of these Gush guns, although we've seen many of these in Ukraine. They also have some of these Hibinets, which are just a truck with a gush gun mounted in the back, so it's pretty much just a large technical. Overall, not that bad. And then they have an endless amount of radar systems, armored recovery vehicles, and the like. Most of your support vehicles that aren't interesting enough, or really enough to cover. But still, I hope y'all get the picture just from this massive breakdown of Polish armed forces equipment that they are one of the best equipped armies in Europe currently, and they are going to become far more equipped as time continues to go by. And it does look like they are preparing for a war on the horizon, at least with the order numbers that they have. Like 1,000 Borsuks on the way, they have to be preparing for a major land war with that kind of a spending budget for the armed forces. But moving on out of the Polish news, we have to move on down into some more concerning NATO news, as we heard that a Shahed 136 drone piloted by the Russian armed forces apparently exploded onto Romanian territory again. This time incredibly deep inside of Romanian territory. This drone exploded around 15 kilometers away from the town of Braia, right here on the Danube River. We're actually going to be getting a little distance correction for that here in a second, and I'm actually going to do that while you look at the debris the Romanian investigators were able to find. 9 miles. All right, so we'll be able to find this here in a second, but you can see that the Shahed 136 exploded inside of some kind of a crop field that had already been harvested, and we can see the debris, clearly, of a Shahed 136 that exploded on Romanian territory.
And Enforcer, you'll remember, I actually reported on this last night. We didn't have any confirmation of it, but I did get I believe a viewer that actually lives in Romania. He took a picture of the news report on TV of the Romanian authorities reporting this as it happened last night. But I'm glad to see confirmation this morning that it was an actual drone itself, because at first I thought maybe it was a missile, but then it turned out it was simply a drone that crashed. That's not any better, but it could have been worse. It could have hit a populated area, which would have caused something even bigger.
And I would agree with you on that. Luckily, it wasn't anything major, but it was only 9 miles away from Braia, which is a major Romanian city on the Danube River. And if we were to measure 9 miles away, that means that at the farthest, this drone made it to around the village right here. I would love to pronounce the name of that, but I have a feeling I'm going to butcher that no matter how I try. But beyond that, that is not that far away. In fact, if we were to measure from that village right there to the actual Danube River and the Ukrainian-Romanian border, it flew an entire 9 miles into Romanian airspace before it finally crashed onto the ground and exploded on Romanian territory. That is incredibly deep. That is actually the deepest strike we have ever seen inside of Romanian territory by a Russian drone. The deepest ones from that point, well, before this point today, were only about 2 miles in at the best. And that is incredibly short compared to a whopping near 9 miles that this drone flew into Romanian territory and then finally exploded. Luckily, no one was injured or killed, but if someone was injured or someone was killed, who knows what would have happened then, because from what we understand, this did land in a field that was being harvested at the time. And if we look around here, sadly, we cannot find any good fields to show, because of course the crops could have changed from when the satellite picture was taken to now, and also the harvest conditions could have been different, so we can't really geolocate this all too well. But nevertheless, this is very concerning, and is once again showing that the Polish do have a valid concern to try and build up their armed forces, because the Russians are more than happy to violate the sovereignty, the airspace, and the security of NATO countries such as Romania in the current war in Ukraine, not even including a full-on conventional war inside of Europe's actual borders. But moving on outside of the NATO news, it's time for us to start moving on into Russia and talk about some of the news that we saw here today. Starting off with some of their first news that we got in Moscow, we actually saw that ISIS started to make fun of the Russian government and called them weak and scared of ISIS because they were trying to blame the West instead. But before we get to that, I have to circle around because my excitement to get y'all into the rest of the news actually ran me clean out of asking y'all a big question, or more so talking about a big question that many people have been speaking of in the live chat right now. This drone explosion was one of the deepest ones that did happen inside of Romanian territory. In fact, it is actually the deepest strike that we have ever seen so far. And many people have been talking about whether this was an intentional act by the Russians, whether it was unintentional and they just lost control of the drone, or what to make of this for that matter at all. Many people have had many different ideas, and it looks like a lot of people are kind of divided on this at the moment and have different ideas about what this really was, whether it was intentional or not. But Matthew, tell me what you think about this drone attack, and what is everyone else thinking about it right now?
All right, so we asked everybody, what do you think about Romania finding an exploded Russian drone within its territory from last night's attack? And like the enforcer said, it's almost evenly split. 38% said it was intentional, 36% said it was likely unintentional, and 17% needed more info first. And it's really hard to say if it was intentional or not, because it is happening right in the same region of Romania, near the port of Renai, right across the border of Ukraine. So the fact that it's happening in the same area, generally, even though this one is deeper this time, it's about 9 miles in, it's generally about the same spot. And me personally, I would have to go with it's likely unintentional, because if Russia wanted to do something intentional, they could have sent it farther in. But of course, they could be using this as sort of like a guise to sort of get away with sort of like jabbing at Romania, but not really attacking it directly. It's just with Russia, you really never even know, because they're so incompetent. It's not too far-fetched to say that they simply miscalculated and hit Romania by accident, like they have in the past. But it's just really hard to say. So I understand why everybody's divided, but I'm with the 36%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to go with the idea that this was actually intentional, because it's a little bit bizarre to say that the Russians can keep a connection with this drone until it hits its target in Renai, and we have seen them hitting targets before in Renai, but all of a sudden they just lose signal with one of them and it goes flying 9 miles in a straight line into Romania and then explodes in the field. That sounds a little far-fetched to me, because if they're able to keep control of this drone as it's flying pretty much over Romanian territory already to Renai, or over Ukrainian territory into Renai, and they don't lose signal with it, then why in the world are they losing signal with one every once in a while and it ends up flying into Romanian territory and blowing up there? And now it's getting deeper and deeper into Romanian territory. That seems a little bit odd to me. And we never hear in any air attack in the entirety of the Ukraine war, the Russians have lost signal with one of their drones that is attacking a major city somewhere in Ukraine. None of them lose signal. They're either shot down or they make it to their target and they hit it, and the signal is never lost at any point during that entire ordeal. For some reason, however, it is supposed to be believed that these drones are now, for some reason, just magically losing signal and ending up blowing up inside of Romanian territory just because. And for that reason alone, I believe that this was an intentional act. I believe it's something to show a bit of a jab at NATO, like they do not respect the sovereignty or the security of a NATO country like Romania, and it's just meant to send across a light message. They're not trying to kill anyone with these instances here, but they are certainly trying to show that they have a good way to get into NATO airspace and conduct attacks if they wanted to, but they're just, throwing him down in the middle of a cornfield to get the message across. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And I'm trying to see, let's see here. There's apparently some other rabble-rouser in the chat, Matthew. Make sure to deal with them rightly. I couldn't find him, though. I was trying to find him there. But
Man, I just took both of them out at the same time. 2 bots working together. Have you seen anything like that? That's terrible.
Man, look at that. We got him. But moving on from that and out of the NATO news, and more so talking about what's going on inside of NATO, it is time for us to move on into Russia and to start to talk about what ISIS is saying about the Russians blaming the West for the ISIS attack. So this was a very interesting one today. I actually had to take a moment here to collect my thoughts. And instead of trying to collect my thoughts to explain this lunacy here, I'm going to just read you all the quote from Al Naba, which is an ISIS-circulated newspaper. So, this is what they said in the paper today. After its resounding defeat, Russia found no choice but to direct accusations of collusion against its opponents in the Western camp to evade admitting its major failure in the face of the Mujahideen. And that was put in a newspaper today that is an ISIS publication, pretty much, and is distributed on behalf of ISIS. They are saying that the Russians are cowards because they're not wanting to actually blame ISIS, and instead they're trying to blame it on other people in the West, like the United States and Ukraine. And the theory that the Russians have come up with lately about what happened is absolutely insane. They are tying ISIS into the theory, that I will say, but they're trying to make it sound like ISIS is a puppet of the United States. And this is something that is absolutely insane. So I'll explain a little bit of what the Russians' theory is. They're saying that the CIA, and of course, for some reason, George Soros, I don't know why he's just thrown in, but apparently some rich guy gets thrown into the equation. So the CIA and George Soros just come up with this idea to create this terrorist organization in the Middle East to mess with Russia, So, and this is the theory that the Russians have come up with so far. The entire organization's deal is to just mess with the Russians and to attack them. So for the first years, the multiple years that ISIS has existed, practically no terrorist attacks happen inside of Russia. They're just entirely inside of Syria and Iraq, fighting Bashar al-Assad and the Iraqi government. And then for some reason, some unexplained reason, during those years, they're just conducting nothing but terrorist attacks against the United States, which supposedly created them as a weapon against the Russians, and also attacking every other European country as well in massive amounts. So then, the United States, for just no reason at all, because it's our creation according to the Russians, create an armed coalition of countries in Europe and in North America that have been attacked by these terrorists, send them into the Middle East, and crush them, and defeat them in 2018, where they have no more land holdings. But for some reason, that doesn't fit into the Russian theory. The Russians just say that we created these people and they have never done anything against the West. They've only been an anti-Russian organization. So after years of all of this going on, finally, ISIS sprung into action because the CIA paid them off, along with Ukraine, through some kind of corrupt backroom dealings, and they finally conducted a real attack on Crocus Hall. And that is the first thing that ISIS has ever done in its history. It has done nothing else. The entire purpose was that it was supposed to attack Russia, and it was funded and founded by the CIA and some George Soros guy. And so, that is absolutely insane to me, because it's completely throwing out of the window everything that happened that ISIS did. You know, San Bernardino, or the Nice attack in France, or the London Bridge stabbing attack, or any of the thousands of attacks that happened in Germany, or any of the attacks that happen anywhere for that matter in the Western world, and all the other terrorist attacks that happen in the United States that ISIS took credit for. For some reason, the Russians want to act like none of those ever happened. And I've got to quickly pull this up. ISIS attacks in the U.S., because we got to get an actual list.
When is ISIS the crypto bro? Payment in Bitcoin. What?
Oh, sorry, you cut out there badly. I was like, I think we lost Matthew. Oh, we had a little lag spike right there. But go ahead, say that again, because I don't think anyone heard you.
I was saying, since when did ISIS become the crypto bros? Like, they're accepting Bitcoin as payment? It's like, is this really, like, does this even sound right?
Man, like, it's absolutely stupid. It is legitimately the dumbest thing ever. But let me really quickly go here. So, here we go. So, here's a list of the attacks. These are attacks inspired by ISIS in orange, and the attacks that were actually conducted by ISIS are in red. And so you can see that the United States has been the victim of a large amount of terrorist attacks inspired by ISIS. So let's go through and let's just count off the ones that happen in the United States, not including any of the other Western European countries. The 2014 Queen's Hatchet attack. And then in 2015, we had the Curtis Colwell Center attack. And then beyond that, the next attack happened in 2015 at San Bernardino. Then moving on to 2016, we had another interesting year as we had the Orlando nightclub shooting, which was once again largely ISIS related. And then moving on from that, a little bit later on in the year, we also had the Ohio State University attack, which was once again more so ISIS-sponsored attack in the United States. Moving on from that and into the next year after that, we didn't really have many attacks in the United States, except for the 2017 New York City truck attack, and then the 2017 New York City attempted bombing, which failed. Moving on from that, and then on into the next year, in 2018, we then also got to hear, and scrolling on down, that there were no attacks on the United States, and that was actually the year, funnily enough, that ISIS got defeated as a landmass inside of the Middle East. Moving on from that, and then into 2019, there were no attacks in the United States. Moving on to 2020, you had the stabbing inside the UK, but that doesn't count because we're only counting the United States right now. And then you just had loads more attacks. Fun times. Because for some reason, you know, there was just terrorist attacks happening in the United States that Russia says never actually happened. San Bernardino, forget about it. That never happened ever. The only attacks that have ever happened. In fact, if you look at this whole list, there are actually a load of attacks that occurred. And hardly any of them were in Russia. Most of them were directed at other countries outside of Russia. But according to the Russian theory now, the whole point they exist is to attack them. And so so ISIS is calling them on this, and they're going, we've attacked everyone in the past, including you, and you're lying about this because you're scared to say it was only us. And you have to try and blame it on someone else because it looks like it's absolutely stupid that a terrorist group that pretty much has practically ceased to exist at this point was able to successfully conduct one of the largest terrorist attacks inside of Russia in its modern history. So, That's the position that ISIS is taking right now. And I gotta say that that is one interesting position, because it's almost like they conducted the attack, Matthew, and then the Russians went, it was Ukraine, and then ISIS went, hey, no plagiarizing, don't steal my work. It's like what? It's like they're getting the blame is being shifted to someone else, and ISIS is pissed off because the blame isn't being put on them.
Yeah, that was a bad group. I have a feeling that the Russians might have known, because obviously they were warned by the United States before this happened that ISIS terrorists were on the loose inside of Russia, and the U.S. told them that directly, but they did nothing. They ignored it. So they kind of knew it was about to happen, but Russia did nothing to stop it. So they let it happen so that way they could try to pin it on Ukraine, and then they forgot. It's like ISIS isn't going to walk away and just say, yeah, we'll let Russia take credit for that. It's like ISIS's whole point of being in existence is to cause terror. So if they don't take responsibility, that sort of negates the whole operation. So for Russia to pick a scapegoat, to let somebody do something like this and then try to pin it on Ukraine, they couldn't have picked a worse group.
I would have to agree. I mean, they couldn't have picked a worse group to do that with. But moving on from that, we've also heard something interesting as well, Matthew, up in the Leningrad military district. And some people are going to go, it's not Leningrad anymore, it's St. Petersburg. And you don't understand. Yeah, it's not Leningrad, but that's what the military district is called. That's what we're calling it. But moving on from that, we did get to hear that the deportation of migrants, a mass deportation, is underway apparently in St. Petersburg. Within the framework of the Operation Anti-Migrant, foreigners are massively detained and deported. Human rights activists report raids on hostels and apartments. Law enforcers on the roads stop cars and check documents. Migrants are massively expelled from the country by airplanes from Pulkovo Airport, which is just south of St. Petersburg. But one thing that's interesting about this is that I'm sure with these mass deportations is coming an alternative. Either you leave Russia, or you can remain in Russia as long as you serve a minimum amount of time in the Russian army. I'm sure that that is one of the options that these people are being given, and it's coming at a very convenient time, as the Russian Federation is trying to build two brand new armies inside of the Leningrad military district. And where in the world are the mass deportations happening? Right in the middle of St. Petersburg, the headquarters of the Leningrad military district. This looks like it is, to me, an attempt to try and either throw the migrants out or to force them into being a part of the Russian army, so that way they can bolster their numbers.
I think it's the second one. Because when you mentioned that the first time, I was thinking, are they really taking these people and making them leave the country? It's like Russia doesn't think like that. Like, let's let these people go and just let them go about their way. They're thinking these people are manpower and we need them right now because we're having to go around the whole world and trying to source mercenaries, and they're having somewhat of a hard time even doing that. So why would they just let this free manpower just run off? I think they're busing them probably right to the training centers, and we'll probably figure that's what's happening in probably a couple of months.
I would have to agree. I think that's really what they're doing. The first thing is what they're saying they're doing, which is deportations. I'm certain that this isn't deportations. This is more so trying to compel service of these migrants into the Russian army. That's what I would believe. But we'll just have to see as time goes by. I'm sure that, oddly enough, those brand new armies, I believe it's the 41st and 44th armies of the Russian ground forces, are probably going to magically fill up here fairly soon within the next few months. But moving on from that and out of our Russian news, it's time for us to talk about something that has been happening in the background a little bit. We covered this yesterday with the interview that Zelensky gave, I believe, to MSNBC. But Zelensky has been talking about the United States needing to give Ukraine aid. The Department of State currently has made a announcement saying that they do not condone Ukrainian strikes deep inside of Russian territory, and that the Ukrainians should stop that for the benefit of the United States, really, without no benefit for Ukraine. And Zelensky has said that he is going to continue to attack Russian infrastructure, critical Russian infrastructure, such as oil refineries and other forms of critical infrastructure, until the United States provides more aid than they are currently. This has actually been a bit of a controversial claim today. We've actually seen that there's been a not so favorable response in some regards and a very favorable response to this in others. Some people have been making the argument that the United States doesn't really have a reason to tell Ukraine what to do or what they can do, because they aren't really providing any equipment to Ukraine in the first place to really have a say. So therefore, the Ukrainians don't really have to do anything they don't want to do unless the United States is providing them a large amount of aid, and then they can have some say in what the Ukrainians are doing. Other people have been saying that this looks very ungrateful on the part of the Ukrainian government, considering the massive amount of support and arms that have been provided by the United States prior, and the fact that Ukraine is going to continue to belligerently do what they do, unless if they're pretty much paid off in military support, has rubbed people the wrong way. I'm not saying that I agree or disagree with either of them at the moment, but I am laying out the arguments that I've seen being made on both camps or both sides of this coin on the internet today, as people have been talking about that and trying to say what they believe is right or what they believe is wrong about this, or what they agree and disagree with. And it looks like a lot of y'all have had a lot to say about this while we've been covering the news of what's going on inside of Russia. And of course, Matthew, what do you think about this, and what is everyone else thinking about this at the moment?
All right, and on this poll, we asked the audience, what are your thoughts on Zelensky saying he'll continue attacking Russian infrastructure until the West provides more aid? 44% said it will force the United States to give more aid. 25% said it will work, but also hurt U.S. relations with Ukraine. 23% were unsure, and 9% said it will cause Western aid to cease. And I'm not going to take credit for this because obviously Zelensky's making his own decisions here. But about a week or two ago, I actually mentioned this idea right here because the West does not want Ukraine attacking Russian infrastructure because that raises the very high possibility that the war is going to escalate to something bigger than it already is. And that's what the West is so desperately trying to avoid at the moment, is a larger escalation. So that gives Zelensky some leverage over the United States to basically negotiate for more aid. And that's what he's beginning to do right now. He's basically saying that if the United States wants to keep having a hand in the control of the Ukrainian war operations, then they have to provide some aid or some military equipment to keep that control. So to me, I would say that is a very wise move. I think it will eventually force the USA to really give more thought to giving more aid to Ukraine. And honestly, we as the United States should not really have a direct say in Ukraine if we're not helping fund their war effort. It's not fair to think that we can have a say in it otherwise. And to me, like I've said before, I think Ukraine is an investment. And right now we are starting to abandon that investment by not giving more aid, which is foolish on a financial front. And it's also foolish on a humanitarian front as well, because we're basically leaving Ukrainians out to die. So I think aid needs to get passed very quickly and the strategy will work. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I'd have to agree with the Ukrainian strategy at the moment. The U.S. doesn't really have a say in Ukraine unless if they have an active involvement in it in some way, like providing aid. I would have to say that I'm largely in line with what the Ukrainians are doing currently. Why in the world should they care what the U.S. would want them to do as far as not striking oil refineries inside of Russia if they're not providing anything to Ukraine in the first place? If you provide something to Ukraine and you're helping them out in their war effort, and then you tell them not to do something, you have a much greater say at that point. But right now, the United States doesn't really have a say in the war. They may have provided support in the past, but they're not providing support currently. And it wouldn't really make a lot of sense for the Ukrainians to revolve their war around a request from the United States, considering that they really owe nothing currently to the United States, and there's nothing at stake to actually make them listen to what the United States would want them to do. So that's what I would have to say on that statement. And I've also seen, because this is something that I just keep seeing in the chat, and I'm going to address it. Someone keeps saying in the chat that this is not a true statement. This is not real news. That the U.S. State Department or the U.S. government never asked Ukraine to not attack oil infrastructure. And also on top of that, this entire thing is a fabrication. I've been seeing this about every single time we brought it up from one particular viewer. And in response to that, I would have to say that we have done everything we can to show that that is actually a true statement. We have gotten direct quotes from the State Department here in the U.S. government. We've also gotten direct statements from the United States. And not only that, if that was not true, if the news we were reporting on and working off of right there was not true, then why in the world is Ukraine saying they're going to keep attacking infrastructure against the U.S. wishes unless they provide more support? That would show that that's apparently something that has been said in the background, and Ukraine said we do not care what the United States says or what the United States wants because they're not really doing anything to help us out right now. That's the way I'd have to address that. But with that, I hope that does address that at least fairly well at the moment, because I believe that the Ukrainians should be able to do whatever they need to do to help them out in this war. And if the United States wants them to do something different, maybe they should be a little bit more involved in the war and they'll have a much higher say on what the Ukrainians can and can't do. But moving on from that, it's time for us to start getting on down into the area of the Free Russian Army, or to at least show a little bit of what's been going on in the city of Belgrade today, as the battles in between the Russian armed forces and the Free Russian Army are still going on at the moment. But before we get into that, I want to make sure to address a couple of questions. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so our first question is going to go to Plant Lady, who's a longtime channel legend and throws in the biggest super chat of the night thus far, which is a very generous $50 donation. And huge shout out to you, Plant Lady, for that support. She says, congrats to my favorite enforcers on your much-deserved YouTube award, and thank you. And please take a question from the chat.
And I gotta thank you for the massive support, Plant Lady, and thank you so much for congratulating us on finally getting that YouTube award. In case y'all are wondering, what YouTube award is Plant Lady talking about? It is the 100,000 sub plaque. And let me see if I can get that play button right here. Here it is, the silver play button. The legendary silver play button. Here it is right here.
Lovely.
We're actually going to be getting 2 of these silver play buttons here in the near future. We are incredibly excited about that because it has been such a long time since we actually passed 100,000 subscribers, and it's crazy to think that we're finally going to be able to have one of these silver play buttons, well, actually 2 of them, one for Matthew's room and one for my room. We are so proud of that, and we're happy to see that YouTube has recognized this channel for the kind of work and effort it's done, and also how large it's grown in the pretty much carrying on of that work and effort. And I gotta thank you so much, Plant Lady, for congratulating us on that, because I cannot wait to see this thing in person. It's going to be incredibly cool. And not only that, we're going to be making sure to show it to all of y'all, because this is something that not many channels actually get. You actually have to be approved specifically by YouTube after you pass 100,000 subscribers to get one of these things at all. And that is actually not something that's guaranteed when you pass 100,000 subscribers. You actually have to kind of be in YouTube's good graces, or at least in YouTube's favor, to even be able to try and get one of these silver play buttons. And the fact that we're
They have to like you.
Yeah, they have to like you. And the fact that we're able to get one is incredibly cool. I don't really know how many other people in the Ukraine war world have ended up getting a silver play button, but I'm very happy to see that we're going to be one of the few that actually has a silver play button. And so with that, thank you so much once again for that incredible thanks for the silver play button and the creator award, Plant Lady. We are so happy to have that thing on the way, and hopefully it will be here soon. And we will make sure to grab a live chat in your honor, Plant Lady. But thank you so much once again for the massive support in helping this channel to be possible. And so what do we got for a live chat, Matthew?
And also, before we grab our live chat question, just a real quick announcement, by the way. We will actually start shipping our limited edition LSA flags starting on Monday, which is just a few days away, which is much earlier than we had previously expected, by the way. And that comes right on the heels of that perfect news about the YouTube award, by the way. So luckily, we're able to ship those things out. We had estimated around April 22nd, and now it looks like we'll have all the flags probably shipped out. I want to say probably because I don't want to make any guarantees. Probably by the end of next week. So we're going to have those things out much, much sooner than expected. And I'm very glad to see that, because I wasn't really happy about how long it was taking to get them in, but we have gotten them faster. So the flags will be going out very, very soon, and happy to announce that. But moving on to our live chat question, this one goes to Shalmanazer, who says, should countries be announcing their production of EW electronic warfare and drones?
I would find nothing really to be wrong with that. If they want to announce that currently, there is a way to find that information if they weren't announcing it, which is just to see how active these arms factories are, to try and estimate how many pieces of equipment they're producing over a given amount of time. So I don't really find anything wrong with that. I find something wrong with that, though, during wartime. During wartime, a country shouldn't really be publicly announcing how much of what they're making. It doesn't really make much sense at all. But during peacetime, you can announce that so and so many units are being made of the certain variety of drone or certain kind of electronic warfare system, and they're going to be used in their armed forces, because the chances are is that in enemies' intelligence services like the Russians are probably going to figure out that information very easy anyways. And so it'd be good just to give the public a reassurance at that point on what the armed forces is really doing to try and be prepared and ready for whatever may be coming down the pipe and down the head in the future. That's what we call on this channel news. That's what we report on here nightly. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And thank you so much once again, Plant Lady, for sponsoring this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. And also sponsoring that live chat as well and helping this thing to keep running, because folks like you, Plant Lady, make this thing possible. I have no idea why I'm stuttering again tonight. I have no idea why, because I feel fine. But with that, thank you so much massively once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our second one is going to go to Simon Dion, who puts in a $50 donation, and that is Simon's first ever super chat on the channel, and that is a big support. So thank you very much, Simon, for that generous support. And he says, thanks for your work from Canada.
And thank you, Simon Dion, for appreciating our work all the way up there in Canada. And thank you for putting in your first bit of support to this channel ever. It's not really a bit, it's actually a lot. And I got to thank you greatly for that and helping this channel to keep on running. It's great to know you're from Canada. I'm assuming you're probably from the southeastern side of Canada over here near Montreal to Toronto. That's where most Canadians live. I believe it's like 90% of the population lives in between, actually technically it's in between Quebec and Toronto. So I'm hoping that I'm able to get that correct. Hopefully that is where you generally are in Canada. But still, thank you so much for enjoying our work. And thank you for supporting it, because your support is helping this channel to be possible. Each and every day, as we cover this news, and y'all support comes into this channel, y'all continue to make this channel a reality. So not only are you enjoying our work, you're actually helping us to make it possible with your support, and we are greatly appreciative of that, and we thank you massively for helping this channel to keep on running and be possible, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to hear that folks are from Canada, folks are from the United States, folks are from Denmark, Britain, Germany, France, Japan, South Korea, all around the world. There are people who watch this channel on every single corner of the globe. And I got to thank you, Simon Dion, for being one of those people who are watching from the Canadian corner of the globe. And I got to thank you for appreciating enough that you supported the channel and found it worthwhile to just let us know that you greatly appreciate it. And so thank you so much once again. And with that, we are now going to be moving on into our last question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving back into the news, starting in Belgorod.
In the third and last one, not the third to last, but the third and last one goes to K-Dub Janky, who's a longtime channel legend as well, who throws in a 50 also. And thank you, K-Dub, very much for that support. He says, Ivan the Terrible in 1530 decided to take the standard of Byzantium, and after its fall to the Ottomans, of the double-headed dragon, symbolic of protecting the East and the West. And when will this fake Roman Empire end?
I don't know, K-Dub Janky. When will it end? It's a great question. Historically, the Russians, this is actually a very interesting side of history. So, the Eastern Orthodox Church is a break-off of the Catholic Church, which happened because of reasons. I'm not going to get into that, but it just happened. Believe me. Trust me on that. It happened, and so the Eastern Orthodoxy and the Catholics ended up excommunicating each other and treating each other as enemies. But Eastern Orthodoxy really grew and really flourished under the time of the Byzantine Empire, which pretty much encompassed the area of the peak of the Ottoman Empire later on in history, because it was the Eastern Roman Empire and then it turned into the Byzantine Empire or Byzantium, all that stuff. And Istanbul was originally called Byzantium. Well, yeah, it was called Byzantium, then it was changed to Constantinople, and then from there it turned into Istanbul later on down the road. But getting out of that small rabbit hole, when the Byzantine Empire fell in 1444 to the Ottomans after the fall of Constantinople, the Russians at the time, well, it wasn't, yeah, actually it kind of was turning into the Russians at the time, like the protoplasmic Russian Empire, or Russia, ended up taking on the mantle of being the defender of the Eastern Orthodox faith. And then a little bit later on down the line, about 100 years later, when you're talking about with Ivan the Terrible, he then took on the symbology of the Byzantine Empire with the double-headed eagle and tried to act like they were now the new defender of the faith. And you'll actually see that historically throughout most of history, after the fall of the Byzantine Empire, the Russians actually try to act like they're the protectors of the Eastern Orthodox faith. And for a while, they actually were. From about the 1530s, all the way up until maybe the late 1800s, they actually did act as the defenders of the faith. Whenever the Ottomans were said to be persecuting or treating poorly Eastern Orthodox peoples of the Balkans, for example, the Serbs, which is why the Russians and the Serbs are such big friends even today, they would actually go in and fight the Ottomans just to head on in a full-scale war to beat them and try and like free or liberate some of these Eastern Orthodox people from Islamic rule. And that was just how it went for hundreds of years. They also did the same thing inside of Georgia and Armenia and Azerbaijan, but that has a very different tint to it because they actually committed a lot of atrocities inside of Georgia against the people, well, actually inside of the Caucasus Mountain region and Georgia, against the people which are called the Circassians. Y'all may have not heard about them because they were actually almost genocided into oblivion by the Russian Empire back during the 1850s to the 1870s. There was actually a specific general, I forgot his name, that was in charge of one of the Russian armies in the area that liked to take the Circassian people, cut off their heads, and boil them, and then put them in a trunk below his bed. And they just carried that around everywhere they went. I have no idea what the hell that was, some kind of a sick, freakish pleasure or what, but the guy was a freak and pretty sick, and he was one of the people who ended up propagating this genocide against the Circassians. Nowadays, that would more so be the Ingushetians, the Chechens, and also the Georgians, kind of all lumped together into one. But beyond that, yes, I don't know when this is going to end. And also another thing to explain is that after the Soviet Union came out of the ashes of the Russian Empire in around 1922 to 1924, because up until then the Russian Civil War had been going on from 1917 to 1922 or 24, once the Soviet Union founded itself, they actually abolished the Eastern Orthodox Church within their zone of control. They said it was forbidden and it was never going to come back. And then Lenin died, and then Stalin came in, and Stalin said, this Eastern Orthodoxy deal actually still has a lot of sway, because, not a lot of people actually gave this up. So what if we just refound, put that in air quotes, refound the Eastern Orthodox Church, specifically the Russian Orthodox Church, and we directly tie it to me. And so then Stalin brought back the Eastern Orthodox Church out of the grave, and then he made himself the supreme spiritual leader of that brand new Russian Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox Church. And that's how the Eastern Orthodox Church exists today. It's not like the original church that existed during the Russian Empire, where it was a part of the Russian imperial government, but it's still actually, I guess you could say, tended to religious matters and was more so of a religious ordeal. Now it's more so of an apparatus of the state, ever since Stalin resurrected it back in, I believe it was the early 30s, and became the supreme spiritual leader of the Eastern Orthodox Church. From that point forward, it has been an apparatus of the Russian state, from the Soviet Union and now the modern-day Russian government. And that's also why, to explain this, the Ukrainians are actively shutting down Russian Orthodox churches inside of Ukraine, because while they are technically religious institutions, they more so operate as an institution of the Russian state, more so than anything else. And so that's why the Ukrainians have been shutting them down, and then some people try to propagandize that and saying that the Ukrainians are attacking Christendom, which they're not. They're shutting down churches that aren't really churches. They're more so Russian propaganda houses. But with that, I hope that goes through and addresses everything with that fairly well, because it is a massive rabbit hole talking about why the Russians have the double-headed eagle and why they act like they're the new Byzantium. And also another thing, this is actually crazy, I forgot to explain this. Throughout a lot of Russian history, there was a grand delusion, like it was a delusion throughout their entire history, that the Russians would be able to retake the city of Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, and make the Byzantine Empire again, that they were the successors of the Byzantine Empire, and they were going to bring it back out of the grave. That was absolutely insane, and they never got close to actually doing it. But that was actually a delusion of the Russian Empire for a very long time, and that's also another reason why they have that double-headed eagle. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the rabbit hole about why they have that eagle, because it's actually a really deep one, entrenched a lot in that Russian, the best way to explain it is a delusion, more so. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support, K-Dub Janky, and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, I wouldn't be able to talk about why the Russians have a double-headed eagle as their symbol. And let me go get the Russian eagle. Here we go. So here we go. Here it is. This is the Russian eagle. Right here. That's it. You can actually see the seal of the Duchy of Muscovy right there in the center, because Muscovy is what's considered to be the heart of the Russian Federation, or the Russian Empire, even back then, because that was the original duchy that would end up expanding and creating the Russia that we all know today, out of the ashes of the Kievan Rus and everything like that. So, interesting, I suppose. But let me show you all this, because Duchy of Muscovy. And let me see if I can get their seal or their flag. Here we go. Here's their flag. So this will do. And this will show y'all exactly what I'm talking about. See, Duchy of Muscovy flag right here. There's their flag. There's the eagle. It's literally the same thing. It's a horseman on horseback stabbing a dragon in the throat, and that's exactly what's on the Russian seal. Because and this, actually it would take a lot of me explaining history, because a lot of people are going to go, no, Russia is actually a part of Ukraine, and it is, but there was a time when the Mongols showed up and things got a little wonky, and then out of that came Ukraine and Russia as two separate entities, and so that's where the Duchy of Muscovy really comes as the heart of modern day Russia. But when you go even further back than that, over a couple of hundred more years, then it's actually the city of Kyiv that is actually the heart of all modern Eastern European cultures, the ones that you could call Slavic at best. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. I'm saying that over and over because I keep on thinking of other things to add. I'm like, oh, let me add this. Oh, let me add that. But I hope I've finally explained everything the best I can, because I think this is about everything that I could cover in a short amount of time without giving y'all like a 90-minute long Putin-style rant on history, like over the past 1,000 years in the area. But with that, thank you so much once again for the massive support, KWJK, and helping this channel to be possible, and thank you for letting me get that history lecture out about why that eagle is the way it is. But with that, it is time for us to move on to what's going on in that country right now, in the area of Belgrade, as we saw a montage today of people taking shelter throughout all of Belgrade as missile barrages were coming down on the city again today because of the Free Russian Army. When you see them all getting in.
They're really fast about running into those shelters.
Man, they're going, just, I mean, like, look at them. Man, they're packing in. Okay, so here's my problem, though. Okay, this is like nothing more than a concrete coffin, because if an MLS hits this thing, it's not lasting. It's not surviving that. Everyone in there will be dead. So I don't get what the point of this is. And on top of that, there's not even a door. So if the MLRS hits on this side, like where the door is, of this box, you're screwed, because you're just literally in a barrel where the shrapnel is going to be bouncing around off the walls. So I don't really get the point of these shelters, but we can see that people apparently have some faith in them.
They're piling in that thing, too.
Good googly moogly, that thing is juicy.
Man, it's like the Russians around and just put these, like, concrete boxes just everywhere.
Oh man, they dropped off the Chernobyl bus. They were like, quick, get to the shelter. Oh, they got a whole other one coming up. And now then we just see them crowding under a bridge. Smart idea again. But with that, that's the end of the clip. It's just showing y'all a montage of Russians taking shelter in Belgrade today, as the city is still under shelter. But with that, we are now going to be moving on from the city of Belgrade, and we're going to be moving on into the city of Kyiv, the actual birthplace of modern Russian or proto-Russian culture. But moving on from that, we got to see that the air defense report today was very successful. Out of everything, 17 X-101s and X-555s were shot down over the past 24 hours, along with a whopping 58 Shahed 136s, 5 X-59 calibers, and 4 Iskander Ks being shot down. You heard that right. 4 Iskanders being shot down. That's actually pretty impressive, because the Iskander is rarely ever used, and rarely ever do we ever get to hear about it being shot down. On top of that, if y'all are curious about this, the Kinzhal hypersonic missile is actually just a little souped up Iskander K. So you can actually see they're doing fairly good. They wildin', they bullin'. But moving on from that and now the air defense report, it's time for us to move on into the area of the location unknowns. And we actually have a fairly interesting amount of them today. Starting off with us seeing some German transport trucks being moved in, thanks to other German transport trucks.
I like that, man. That is do you see all the wheels in that trailer? Like, go back to that real quick. Man, that is a weird trailer they're carrying that thing on. It's pretty cool, though.
It is really cool. And also, man, you look, it's a man cat.
Contra?
It's a man cat carrying a cougar.
Oh, a man cat carrying a cougar.
The jokes make themselves. I mean, like, the jokes
Yeah.
really do make themselves. Moving on from that into the next one, we got to see Ascania here carrying an MTLB. We also got to see another man cat carrying a Humvee.
Oh, nice. I like to see the Humvees. Got to have that American equipment in there too.
Man, you gotta have that American equipment in there. And I gotta tell y'all, it is so hard to say with a straight face, man cat. And I'm not kidding. It's literally called a man cat. And I can type, wait, hang on. I didn't even open up a new tab right there. I thought I did. Man cat. Let me type in, let's see, truck. Okay, so here we go. So there we go. I found it. So this is the truck I'm talking about. The Man Cat 1. And that's it. So when you see these trucks here, these are man cats. So just letting y'all know that. So I'm not making that name up. It's literally just what the truck's called. It's called a man cat. I had to say that, though. I had to clarify that again tonight because I don't want people going, what type of weirdo is this talking about a man cat? I'm not the weirdo, okay? The Germans are the weirdos because they came up with a name for the truck. Like, what in the world were they thinking? They could have called this thing, like, you know, something better, like a man... that man tiger doesn't sound that better. Honestly, there's just no good name that you can make with man being the name for your company. You're just kind of screwed. You know, like, there's
Man
no
truck.
good, man, like, call this thing, I don't know. I have no idea. I'm out of ideas.
You can't go too many places with man. It's like, does that stand for something, by the way? Does MAN stand for something?
I think it's the company. Yeah, here we go. It's man. That's literally just the name of the truck company is man.
Oh, it's just man. Well, that's interesting. I've seen those trucks before, but I don't know much about like the history behind it or anything. Because I'm not an expert on European trucks.
And apparently, Matthew, they also have a sub company of man called Latin American Man, who operates in Latin America.
I sure do. And also, is that a corgi they have for the emblem of the truck down there on that picture?
It looks like
What is that? Is that a lion?
it's a lion.
Oh,
Oh
well,
my God.
it had short legs for a lion. It looked like a corgi.
Dude, the meme material is endless. The lion comes from Bussy AG. Oh my God. Dude, this is hilarious. It resembles the coat of arms of the city of Brunswick. Let's go look at. No, the hell it doesn't. That's not the same lion. What the hell are they talking about? Yeah, that's a huge stretch right there. That is not the Brunswick lion right there. That's BS. But moving on from the man cat, because we still got lots of news to cover tonight. We're going to be moving on from the man cat and into our next bit of news, where we got to see one of those M120 racks, the automatic mortars based off of the Rosamac earlier today that I showed you all when we were talking about the Polish armed forces. We got to see one in action in Ukraine today, and I got to say, that's a nice rack. Here's the clip.
Екіпаж наш, перший раз ззаді сижу.
Oh, look at that.
Підарева, хуї будуть сьогодні.
No work required from the crew.
Нет, шестерки, говорю, иду. Все отлично, ребят.
That's handy.
Very handy.
Стой, Саня, не спеши. А я не спешу, Ярек. Мне Димон открыл, Илюш. Димон! Да, я выйду. Димон!
And that's seeing the clip, but showing us the inside of a rack in operation. Really cool. Moving on from that into our next clip, we also got to see the Ukrainians building decoy weapons out of sewer pipes. Look at this. Drain pipes more so, but I call them sewer pipes. This is supposed to be, as my esophagus collapses right there, this is supposed to be a D-30 artillery piece, but they made it out of fake stuff to make it look like a D-30, but it really isn't a D-30. It's a fake D-30, meant to draw in Russian fire. But moving on from that little bit of news, because that's just kind of cool, but we got even cooler, we got to check out this Russian soldier getting hit on a ladder. Y'all thought y'all had seen everything. Russians getting hit in trenches, Russians getting hit in puddles, Russians getting hit on the water, but now we have a Russian on a ladder. And watch out, if you rush on a ladder, or if you're Russian on a ladder, you could fall and break your neck. And it looks like this guy is Russian on a ladder. Uh-oh. Well, his neck is broken.
Oh, man.
Good.
Man, that would suck.
That would suck.
I thought he was going to fall down the tower or something. That would have been even worse if you got like knocked off or the explosion happens just below you and you have to fall all the way to the bottom. Jeez.
Man, that would be bad, man. You're just imagining purgatory
That would
at
hurt.
that point. that would hurt. But moving on from that and into our next bit of location unknown news, we also got the Russian casualty report today. And
Oh, man, what in the world? 7 Bobcats in a day, and also the losses are massive in every other category. I love to see it.
good googly moogly. That thing is juicy. And it really was juicy today, Matthew. 7 Bobcat skid steers being destroyed. A really impressive number. But not only that, the numbers were impressive in every other category as well. 820 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 27 armed personnel carriers, 50 supply trucks, 8 main battle tanks, 28 artillery systems, 56 drones, 2 MLRSs, 5 cruise missiles, and 6 anti-aircraft warfare systems. It was a wildly successful day today for the Ukrainian armed forces in their defense of the country, as they were able to once again inflict a very high number of losses onto the Russian army. And so we're going to be moving on from that, and on into our next bit of news, which is down actually in the city of Sevastopol. Y'all might be shocked to know this, but that Su-27 that was shot down, that thing was not shot down by Ukraine. Here's the clip just to remind everyone. You see that Su-27 spiraling upside down in a flat spin to the sea below right outside the city of Sevastopol? Some people said that was probably a Ukrainian shoot-down, a modified S-200, that it reached that far, around 170 miles behind the front lines, and it hit that Su-27 over the city of Sevastopol and ended up leading it into having a drink. The reality of the matter is a lot more funny, as Ukrainian forces were able to confirm today that that Su-27 was actually shot down in a friendly fire incident over the city. That was according to the Ukrainian Navy and published by the Kyiv Independent today, letting us know that apparently the Russians are susceptible to friendly fire incidents over friendly territory, even when the aircraft is visible and clearly a Russian Air Force marked aircraft. This once again
they're getting so rattled because of the attacks on Crimea by Ukraine recently that they're shooting down their own planes. They just did that. What was it, about 3 weeks ago to a month ago? They shot down their own spy plane, the A-50 or whatever.
The command plane, the A-50, yeah, they shot it down. And that's another thing that I'm circling back to here, Matthew. That's actually a good way to segue into that. Because the Russians conducted friendly fire in literal broad daylight against an Su-27 that was theirs, that took off from Belbek Airfield. So let me explain this to make this a little bit more clear. The jet took off north of Sevastopol. The Russian air defense radars tracked that plane from when it took off at Belbek to when it started flying right around here where it was shot down. And then they went, oh my God, it's Ukrainian, shoot it down. And then they shot it down. So they're able to do that. Literally, when they watched the Russian plane take off from the Russian-controlled airfield and then they still shoot it down, why is it out of the picture for some people to say that it's entirely possible that the Russians shot down the A-50 near Novocherbenskaya? I'm just saying, I think it was still shot down by the Russians. Because there's no way in hell, all right? Like, hear me out. There's no way in hell that the Ukrainians can modify an S-200 missile that was introduced in the service in the mid-60s to do better at shooting down aircraft than a modern Patriot or THAAD air defense system could ever do. I call BS on that. I do not believe that that is a true claim. I do not believe that is a true statement. I think 100% that the S-300s and S-400s that were in the area ended up shooting down the A-50 in a friendly fire incident. And this instance today, once again, shows that the Russians clearly have the ability to shoot down an aircraft they would clearly know is theirs, but they're too stupid to actually make sure that it's not theirs. So with that, we're going to be moving on from that little report down there in Sevastopol, and now we're going to be moving on into them front lines. But before we do, actually one more bit of aviation news. Here's a video that was published back in the middle of February, but we just got it today, showing an Su-25 firing off some rockets. Funnily enough, this was actually published apparently on my birthday, but we never got to see this footage. So we're going to be showing it today. Here goes the Su-25 rocketing its way over what I would assume to be the Dnipro River.
That's some beautiful waterfront property.
Beautiful. I mean, gorgeous stuff. Man, this thing is flying so fast, the wings are shaking. It's like near its max speed. Because when a plane gets close to its max speed, the wings actually vibrate a decent amount. It's something that you can visibly see if you're the pilot and you look back at the wing. You can actually see the wing vibrating. So, pretty cool. But we see it firing off its rocket.
It's just shuddering with anger. I'm telling you, it's just shaking with anger.
Man, this thing is up there going... We see it turning back around, popping off chaff and flares behind it. We now see it tilting up again to fire off another salvo of rockets over this beautiful field of flowers. And now popping off chaff and flares again and hitting the deck. We see them tilting up again and firing off even more rockets. I mean, this guy just loves firing rockets. This is actually over multiple sorties, by the way, so this isn't the same time of day, because this guy is only carrying, I believe, 2 rocket pods at a time. So he fires both rocket pods, and then he flies back to the airbase, reloads, and then he goes out and fires another rocket mission like this one right here. So here he goes. He's about to tilt up. And right here at the edge of this river probably will come the tilt. Oh, actually he didn't. So here we go. He finally tilts up to a certain angle, fires off the rockets, and then hits that hard left bank and starts hitting the deck. And is that someone I spy speaking politics in my chat? No. No politics. But we can see them continuing to fire off unguided rockets. And just doing their thing. Look at them go. I mean, this is some beautiful footage right here. And now they're tilting up again, firing off those rockets, and then turning hard left and popping off those chaff and flares.
Now, my question is, why are the jets doing that? Because I can kind of understand why the helicopters do it, because they're like much more serious targets because they can't move as fast and leave the area. But how come the jets aren't actually going up and firing on the spot they want to hit instead of doing the helicopter routine?
Well, Matthew, that's a great question. You see, missiles that are fired from the ground, regardless whether they're fired at a helicopter or an aircraft, travel nearly at Mach 3 at their top speed. Of course, that top speed is only reached for a short while, but still, like a surface-to-air missile is just incredibly fast. And so an aircraft or a helicopter can actually be under serious threat from just a normal man-pad on the ground. And so they have to fire off those chaff and flares so that way a lock from a man-pad or from an air defense system may be broken, because otherwise the missile can still chase these aircraft down and destroy them in flight.
Interesting.
Very
I just can't help every time I see it. Like, I get there's probably a reason behind it, but it's like, in reality, unless they're like guided rockets of some sort, let this guy flying back through the flares like that. That's kind of interesting. But unless they're like guided, then you really just can't, know where they're going, even if you aim in the right direction.
I don't know what you mean by that. Are you talking about the rockets that the Su-25 is firing, or are you talking about ground air defense firing back at the Su-25?
The rockets being fired by the aircraft we're looking at.
Oh, man, they know where they're going. They plan all this out. I'll explain. This is actually a little bit of a lengthy explanation, but I'll explain because it's a good explanation. So, let's say that this is the airbase at Kryvyi right out here. Looks abandoned, but we'll say it's being used right now. And so, let's just say it's this airbase out here. So, they meet up in one of the offices, and they go, okay, here's your sortie today. And they map out the entire air operation. They say, you're going to take off, you're going to fly more so to this navigational direction, and then you're going to make this turn at this waypoint, and then you're going to fly over here, and then you're going to make it to this exact area right here over this little barn. Once you pass directly over that barn, you're going to tilt up at 20 degrees and fire off your rockets. And they'll be flying at a certain altitude and everything. And that altitude in the rocket, at the tilt of the aircraft when it's firing off the rockets, is all very important, because you can actually get MLRS levels of accuracy out of an aircraft that is firing unguided rockets like that if you time the tilt, the altitude, and the airspeed of the plane all properly during that launch. You can actually get the same spread on those rockets as you get on an MLRS. The exact same with helicopters as well. So that's why they do that, because it's pretty much like having rocket artillery in the area without having to have rocket artillery forces on the ground.
Interesting. I would accept that.
Interesting. But moving on from that little clip and out into our front lines, it's time for us to get on up into the northeastern area, where we got to see today that a Tor 2 air defense system got knocked out by the 14th. So check it out. All right, cool. But we can see the drones having a little bit of static. I guess you could say it's a little static. And we see the drone coming right on into the Tor 2, and we can see that the solid propellant of the surface-to-air missiles in the Tor is burning, and we can see that there's a second one here on the street as well. It looks like they're going to be attempting to target it and destroy it. And it looks like they're actually trying to drive it away, but they will not be doing that anymore. Moving on from that, it's time for us to get on into our next clip, a little bit farther down the lines, inside of the Kremenna Forest, where we are able to see the 81st Air Mobile Brigade hitting some more targets. We're going to be muting that. And we see the drones flying around, and it looks like they're going to be targeting that BMP, and they hit it dead on the side. And Agent B7 said, they can reach that high accuracy with indirect fire from a vehicle moving at 200 to 250 knots. I'm doubting it. Well, don't. That's because they can, and they will. They're very accurate.
Oh! Smacked.
But that's the end of that clip, and nice to see that they were sending in the drone forces to do their work. Huge shout out to the 81st Air Mobile Brigade. Moving on from that, we were also able to see that a Russian tank got detonated today by a Baba Yaga, and this is what's left. Nothing is left. This was a tank, a main battle tank at a time, and now there is nothing left of it. But some track links, some road wheels, and that's about it. We're not really seeing much more than that. Oh, look. I don't know what the hell that is, but still, interesting.
It's like a thermos, but a shell or something at the same time. But it's not a Baba Yaga blyat.
Baba Yaga, and there's the charred remains of the tank again.
Oh.
And then there's another road wheel right there. I have a feeling that the crew wasn't necessarily having the best of times. But you know, I mean, who cares about the crew? I'm sure they're fine somewhere, probably all over the place. But anyways, moving on from that tank that got detonated, it's time for us to move on down to the area of Verkno-Kamyanske, where we got to see a Russian FPV drone get a near hit on a Ukrainian armored vehicle. Here's the clip, and there's the drone. Blew up right beside him to the right. And that's the end of that clip. But oh man, was that close. And luckily, the Ukrainians got out of it just fine. Moving on from that and down to the Bakhmut area, we did not get any frontline reports from this area. It appears to be just a nice little place, a nice little a plot of quiet battlefield. Once one of the most active battlefields in Ukraine, now it's just another part of the front line. Moving on from there and down to Avdiivka, we did get to see that a T-80 BVM was destroyed today by the 47th Brigade near to the area of Berdichi. Actually, it was destroyed by the 25th Brigade of the Avdiivka, but here's the clip. When you see a Russian, bliat, suke, bliat, and here comes the Avdiivka drone, hitting right onto the side. Oh, dang. Right on the side of the turret. Ooh, nice. And that's the end of the clip. But nice to see that you're able to get a little hit. Epic Games, I'm going to have to uninstall Epic Games. But anyways, moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see a Russian trying to surrender, but it was a little too late. You have to remember, folks, there are no mulligans in war. I don't know what the hell that phrase means, but this guy literally tried to surrender at the last minute. The drone started flying into his bunker, and then he comes out waving a white flag. It's a little too late at that point, because the drone's velocity is already going to make sure that it detonates, but it looks like this guy tried. Give him an E for effort. So here's the Russian bunker. You're about to see it get hit by the first drone. And there it goes, right inside the bunker. And we can now see that after the first one hit, the Russian is trying to wave a white napkin to surrender, but it was a little too late. And so he ended up not doing too well. But with that, that's the end of the clip. And the 93rd just wanted to share the message. It's not over till it's over. But moving on from that and down a little bit further on down the lines, we also got to see the 59th Brigade conducting some FPV drone attacks on the Russians just a little bit further down the Avdiivka area. We're going to be muting that. And we can see the FPV
This
drones.
is the key group, блядь. Key group where they're like running down the walls like the blood on the Amityville horror, блядь.
Or something like that.
Shadow Wizard Money Gang.
We love casting spells.
Man, key group needs to like up the resolution just a little bit.
Man,
Oh dear.
Key group be keying them in a little. Oh, whoa.
Oh my.
Oh my.
Whoa.
Whoa.
What key group? Oh goodness.
I only saw luggage, Matthew. I don't know about you. But we can see another drone hitting near this BMP. We see another one hitting near this APC as well. Ooh, dead on the nail. Moving on from that, we can see the drone operators here. Just chilling and grilling as they continue to do their thing. We make it look easy. Walk with your boys. Damn, son.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Hey! Hey. But anyways, with that, that's the end of that clip. But nice to see. And we're going to be moving on down into the southern front, where we also got to see a couple of clips down here. Like, for example, at Shevchenkove today, we got to see a Strela get hit by a missile and blow up. We're going to be muting that. And, gotta say, bottom right corner, but we can see. It's interesting.
The
Luftwaffe. That's what the German Air Force is still called today. But interesting symbology. Anyways, we can see the Strela getting hit by the HIMARS missile.
Why do the Ukrainians want to like borrow the German Air Force like name and all that good stuff? Like, why would they want to do that?
Shut! I don't know. I honestly don't know. But still interesting. Apparently they just like Luftwaffles. But with that, that's the end of the clip. Nice to see they were able to get a Strela. And we're going to be moving on from that one and into our next clip, where we also got to see a BMP-3 get hit and destroyed. There goes the M67 frag. That's going to blow up in the APC. Taboo. And the fire will probably start to spread here pretty quickly.
Is this the work of the Luftwaffe?
Man.
The Wiener Schnitzel into the tank, блядь?
Man, I'm telling you what. This is a Luftwaffe. Would you like the Luftwaffe to deliver your Luftwaffe? They can deliver it to you the Polish way. And then the Polish are over there, no! They're like, no, stop, make it stop. But anyways, we can see the BMP-3 is toasting up here. Watch how the fire spreads. Look how thick the smoke is.
Someone said, focus! We are so focused, блядь. Oh, goodness. And the Ukrainians are even more focused than us, блядь.
Someone said,
They focus on blowing up this armor and tank, блядь, and they take it down with the Luftwaffe.
Seth MacFarlane said, focus. You know how long I've been doing this? I've been doing this for 765 days. Dagnabbit. I'm focusing. This is how we actually focus at this point. But that BMP-3...
Peter, the horse is here. Peter, focus, will ya?
But anyways, moving on from that clip and on into our next one, a little bit farther behind the lines, we got to see what it looks like to catch a supernova drone. Check it out. Here it comes. Look at it go. It deploys the chute. And it comes on down and they grab it. Interesting. Well, moving on from that clip, not a lot to say. We're going to be moving on down into the area of Krenki, where we got to see that apparently the Marines were using a Stugna against the Russians today. Oh, have you ever wanted to try and get yourself a pickup truck with a Stugna in the back? Well, then you, my friend, are in luck. Introducing the brand new Ukrainian 36th Brigade, firing Stugnas at Russians with velocities that will blow your brains clean out the back of your head. Whoa, watch out. Here comes the Foo Fighter in the live chat getting banned straight out right when they got in. Watch this. They're going to hit this Russian target dead on. Kabooey. Wow. Make sure to buy
He said,
your-
I'm tired of this channel hyping up this war like it's fun. Unsubbed.
like they were ever
Scoops!
subbed. Like they were ever subbed in the first place. The biggest
They
lie.
were never subbed. I just checked.
Yeah,
They lie like the Russian bots.
The biggest lie that I've ever seen is when people come in and they bitch about something that this channel has done since day one, and then they say they unsub. This is like, if you didn't like that, then you never subbed in the first place, because we've always been doing this the same way for 736 freaking days. Well, 765 freaking days. But moving on from that and into our next clip in the area, we also got to see that the Kherson anti-air defense was shooting up some drones.
Виталик, давай! Огонь, огонь,
Kind of like how the Russians shoot up crocodiles. Check it out. The air defense is going off.
Над нами летит, падла, над нами летит! Где сопровождать?
Ракета пошла, выход ракеты.
Oh.
Есть сбитие.
Whoa,
Сбитие
Jack, shut it down.
счет.
Whoa, Jack, whoa!
Ракета, выход ракеты. Есть сбитие
Hit me with a
еще.
missile, Jack. Do some push-ups, Jack.
Hit him with a spotlight, fatty. But anyways, that's
Be thankful it's not a 9mm though.
Blow the lung out the body. Clay it out of the body. You go straight out the mouth. But anyways,
It's like years hit the front of the lung, and then all of a sudden it pops out of your body like a something else. I'm telling you.
pops
Somebody
out.
says this is Ukraine shield channel. No, it's not. Get out of here. Bye bye.
What shill channel? No, sorry, those losers are on another channel. But moving on. From
Oh.
that,
Oh.
moving on from that and up into the. That was too
That
perfect.
came in cold.
Man, they set him up and I knocked him down. I was like, you know what? We got to take the chance. But moving on from that, it's time for us to get on to the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 765 of the war. And so, without further ado, here is the speech. Speech! And let me make sure. Okay, here we go. We're good to go, and we're going.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Провів сьогодні ставку, багато в чому саме за наслідками російських ударів минулої ночі та цими тижнями. Основна мішень для ворога зараз в ракетному терорі – це енергетика. Різні частини нашої енергосистеми. Продумані підлі російські удари, зокрема по гідроенергетиці. Обговорили на ставці всі аспекти захисту об'єктів, відповідно її роботи як в Україні, так і з партнерами. Це має значення не лише для нашої держави, але й для сусідів, і для континенту в цілому. Були удари по Дністровській станції, по Канівській станції, і це очевидно свідчить, що Росія хоче повторення такої катастрофи, яку вони влаштували на Каховській станції. Має стати обов'язково спільним завданням, не тільки українським, щоб таких екологічних катастроф більше не було в нашій Європі. Крім України, під прямою загрозою Молдова. Я вдячний усім партнерам, які допомагають нам боротись за ППО, за відповідне постачання, і це надзвичайно важливо. І на дипломатичному фронті ми багато сил витрачаємо не просто на протидію російським впливам, але й на те, щоб переконувати партнерів, збільшувати постачання систем ППО і ракет до них. Звичайно, багато роботи в різних регіонах і щодо фізичного захисту об'єктів енергетики. Були доповіді сьогодні і представників енергокомпаній, і урядовців. Друге питання на ставці – це постачання зброї і снарядів для фронту, для наших дій зараз, найближчими місяцями. Чітко розуміємо, до чого готується Росія. Вони хворі війною, самі не зупиняться. І ми робимо все, щоб була можливість достатньої протидії. Сьогодні ж представив нового секретаря Ради національної безпеки та оборони Олександра Литвиненка. Одним із його пріоритетних завдань зараз є більше координації, більше якісних проєктів рішень, усього того, що посилить нашу державу і в сенсі захисту від російських амбіцій та, власне, нашої здатності загасити ворожі амбіції. Олексій Данілов продовжить роботу на дипломатичному напрямку. А конкретніше, я погодив його кандидатуру в якості нового посла нашої держави в Республіці Молдова. Він говорив мені саме про таке бачення своєї подальшої роботи на Україну. Для нас Молдова є надзвичайно вагомою державою і з точки зору безпекових викликів в регіоні, і з точки зору нашої двосторонньої взаємодії. І ще дещо. Сьогодні дуже швидко зібрала необхідні голоси петиція щодо тематики казино онлайн, платформ, гральних, про те, як це поширено і як це впливає на частину суспільства. Я доручив голові Служби безпеки України, Держспецзв'язку, Мінцифрі та секретарю РНБО зібрати мені всю аналітику з цього питання і наступного тижня запропонувати рішення. І останнє. Сьогоднішній день почався рано, вночі, через російські ракетні удари. Я був на постійному зв'язку з командувачем повітряних сил Олещуком і з главкомом Сирським. Детальні доповіді, детальні будуть і відповіді ворогу. Слава нашому міцному народу. Слава Україні.
And they're on the Slava. And he's talking about some serious retaliation there, and they're going to be whipping out the big guns, I'll bet. But with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 765 of the news of the war in Ukraine. And that means that we're getting really close to day 767, which means that we're going to be looking at our next Boeing jet. Whoa, watch out. Do you speak crap about the legacy company? Whoa, hey, careful, bud. But beyond that, we are getting very close to day 767. And you know something that's crazy is that day 767 is actually going to be falling on Easter Day, believe it or not, the Sunday. So that's a perfect day to talk about the Boeing 767, to celebrate Easter, and not only that, to help out Ukraine on a Sunday night fundraiser. So y'all make sure to be here that Sunday, because it's going to be a fun one, a great one, and we hope to join you all on Easter Day for the rest of you. But with that, we got to make sure to talk about the next big thing in this news tonight, because we heard that the International Atomic Energy Agency confirmed that the Russians are using the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant as a firing point. Who would have thought? Who would have thunk it? I never thunk it. Did you thunk it, Matthew? I never thunked it.
This was a revelation that I couldn't have seen coming if my life depended on it.
Man, I never saw that coming, man. The IAEA is just way ahead of the times. I mean, hell, I think we reported that like a year and a half ago or something like that, and they're finally saying it now. Whack. I mean, like, it's crazy. If people count
the IAEA must have Albert Einstein on their team or something. They're over there doing those nuclear physicists, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they are. I mean, it's just crazy, Matthew. Absolutely bizarre. I feel like if people actually counted on us to give them the news, I feel like people would be a lot quicker to reacting to things, because we did this about a year and a half ago before it was even cool. Now we're hearing that apparently the IAEA finds it to be cool. So, good on them. I'm sure someone from the IAEA is watching right now. I'm absolutely ripping them. Sorry about that. But beyond that, Matthew, many people have been talking about this. Some people have been saying they may be using it as a nuclear shield. Others are saying that this is just bogus. But Matthew, what are people saying about this? What do you think about it?
All right, and let me time someone out. Please no politics in the chat, folks. It causes so many fights. Let's please not talk about politics.
Sorry, no, we're actually going to have to ban them, because that's like the second or third time they've done it that I've seen.
Oh, dear. He had to go.
You got to go.
Oh, no.
No politics.
But anyways,
no politics, kids.
Moving on to this poll question, what are your thoughts about the IAEA confirming Russia is using the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant as a firing point? 81% said Russia is using it as a nuclear shield. 8% said Russia hopes Ukraine hits the plant. And 5% said it's fair play, it's war. And, even though war is horrible and you never want to have to endure war, there are some rules that people should abide by. That's just the way things work. And one of those rules is you do not resort to using weapons of mass destruction, or at least we're supposed to abide by those rules. But here we see Russia using a nuclear power plant as a firing point, and they are certainly using it as a nuclear shield because they know Ukraine can't hit it directly, or otherwise they'll cause a meltdown. So obviously, to me, that is not fair play. That is playing outside the bounds of the rules, which is something that Russia doesn't think twice about doing at this point. So to me, it's a terrible thing, and to me, it's not really shocking. This is not shocking news whatsoever. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd say you reported it a year and a half ago. What can we say? It's not shocking to me. Like, you know, it's like we can't say much more about it than we have in the past because, you know, we've been doing this for a year and a half now talking about this. But with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. You know, and what does that count for? Absolutely nothing. And what the hell was that? What the hell is even that? We got the free Melbnik in here. Just throwing in the alphabet. I don't even know what that was, Matthew, but they're gone now. They're gone. Rest in peace.
Man, it's just when the bots have nothing good to say, they come in with the gibberish.
Man, that guy literally came in here and went, "Oh, the McDaniel here for E-I-E-A-O." And we were like, get him out of here. Get him out of here. But anyways, with that, I hope I addressed that well, at least in my opinion. And it's time for us to be able to talk to all y'all. We're going to be talking to y'all in y'all super chats, and then we're going to be getting into the live chats. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so hopping back into our super chat segment and starting our nightly talk, this one goes to Drew Watkins. He throws in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Drew, for supporting the channel once again. And he says, a Kansas City auto worker here. He says, my Ukrainian coworker is from the same region that the Russian Su-35 was recently shot down in, and he claims it was shot down by the Russians, red on red.
And Drew Watkins, thank you for being our Kansas City auto worker. That is really cool to know that you're out there in the city of Kansas City. Most of it's actually in Missouri. It's false advertising. But beyond that, really cool to hear that you're out there working in the auto industry. And also, Kansas City was not that bad of a place. I actually went here before, and I was like, wow, this is great. I mean, this is a really nice looking place. And then you'll have the National World War I Museum and Memorial, and it's the best World War I museum out there that you can imagine. I mean, what happened? But beyond that, I gotta say, absolutely beautiful. And yes, we were able to confirm that. The Ukrainian Navy said it. We said it last night, but I was going to hold out hope that it may have been a Ukrainian missile. But I mean, yes, absolutely great stuff. And I also got to thank you so much, Drew Watkins, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. You've been here for quite a while, actually, a very long time. And I got to thank you so much for continuing to be here with us as we cover this news on this channel the way we always have. And I got to thank you so much for appreciating that enough that you would find it worthwhile to support the channel and to help us to keep this thing running and to help it to be possible. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, Drew Watkins, we simply wouldn't have been able to be here right now. And so thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, because it was a red on red ordeal, and we were able to confirm that tonight here on the news. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
All right, and the next one, it goes to Bex Chitwood, who puts in a $50 donation. And Bex has been here for a very long time.
Really?
And thank you, Bex, once again for supporting the channel. He says, the history lesson I didn't know I needed. And he's starstruck. He's putting in a starstruck emoji. He says, congrats on the silver play button.
Hey, thank you so much for congratulating us on that silver play button. We're happy to have it. Some people don't have them. We have them. We're going to have them at least. And I got to say, that is something that is absolutely wonderful. I love to know that, you're very happy for us there. And also, more than happy to teach the history lessons. I mean, I didn't get a history degree for nothing. I feel like it's reflected in what I say, because there's a lot of people out there who I would be smart in their field, but wouldn't necessarily be smart in this, trying to think up some stuff. I'll just leave that for y'all to fill in the blanks. Y'all fill in the blanks. But I always like to fill in the history, because the history always helps you to understand what's going on in a modern day and age, especially over the past 100 years. Beyond that, it's just kind of fun to know. But really, the past 100 years from World War I up till now are the most important ones. But beyond that, I got to thank you so much once again, Bex Chidwood, for being a massive supporter of this channel and helping us keep this thing running. You've been making this possible since the very early days of this channel, and I got to thank you so much for appreciating that history lesson, and also thank you so much for being happy that we finally got the silver play button. We should have gotten it a long time ago, but before we got up to 100,000 subs, we had actually been copyright striked falsely by someone who didn't even own the copyrights. And it was ridiculous, but we got him taken care of. We ended up winning that little fight, but the copyright punishment still kind of stood on the channel, where if we passed 100,000 subscribers, we couldn't get a play button for a year, because they just simply wouldn't allow it on YouTube, and they wouldn't even review the request. So with that, I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel keep on running. I can't thank you enough. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Hal Rose, who puts in a $33 donation, and Hal Rose is the legend of the channel, and he says, Enforcer Matt, happy Good Friday, and happy Friday to you, Hal Rose, as well. Good Friday. And Slav Ukraine. And he says, pick a question from the chat, please. And also, Hal Rose, something funny last night, by the way. When we were actually getting off of last night's stream, I actually went through a whole spill when we were getting off the stream. I said, thank you all for spending your Friday night with us on a Thursday night, because my MacBook said Friday, because it went ahead and jumped ahead because it was past midnight. So tonight actually is Friday. So thank you all for spending your Friday night with us again, including you, Hal, tonight, which is actually Friday. But Enforcer, what say you?
Y'all spent 2 Friday nights with us in 1 week.
Yeah.
Massive
It was
stuff.
Friday in my mind, at least.
Man, in my body saying it's Thursday, but my mind saying it's Friday. But beyond that, thank you so much for the massive support, Hal Rose, and thank you so much for wishing us a happy Good Friday. It was a pretty good one today. It was mostly work-related stuff, making a YouTube video, then receiving the hundreds of flags that we will have to hand sign. They are here in this room. And
the packaging.
Oh my God, it's crazy because we have, like, each box, by the way, there are multiple boxes. I'm not going to give you all an exact number, but each box has, hell, at least, what is it, like 110 flags per box? Something like that?
Yeah, do the math. It's quite a bit.
Yeah, it's a lot of them. And each box weighs, like, I think it's like 65 or 70 pounds. It is a lot of flags. Like, it is a load of them. And so we, of course, did our little quality control check today. Honestly, I was kind of laughing with Matthew while we were doing it, because I was like, dude, the way we're opening up these boxes and opening up the flags to check them, I feel like we're in the cartel checking out, like, the cocaine bricks. Because we would, like, open up the box, and then we get one out, open up the wrapper, pull out the flag, we look at it, we like, yeah, that's fine quality. And then we, like, pack it back up and put it back in there. I was like, man, this feels wild. And there's so many of them. Like, I'm looking at them right now. My room is pretty much turned into a shipping office for the most part because of how many flags and how many boxes are in here. But those,
and also, we did get y'all some extras, by the way, that are going in the bag that I think y'all are going to be super happy to get. The extra came in today as well, along with the packaging, and I was very pleased with it. I actually took an extra for myself because I had to have it in my office, and y'all are going to love it too, I think. Man, that sounded like that commercial, you know, that, like, male testosterone commercial. The dude's always like, and you'll love it, she'll love it too.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's so cringy.
Oh man. Oh my God. And the way they say it is so cheesy. Like they even know it's
oh
cheesy.
my God, it's so cringy, man. It's so wrong too to even say that.
Don't worry, she'll love it too. And they say it like that, and it's like, ugh, it's like gross. So you know how to get that across. Like, I think we kind of get it from what the product is already. Ugh. But anyways, beyond that, dude, thank you for wishing us a happy Good Friday. It is going to be Easter here soon. I mean, not that long from now. It's going to be Easter. And who doesn't love Easter? It's just a great time to be with a family, great time to celebrate things if you're a Christian, which we are, so we're going to be celebrating things, as you all know. And also, you know, just hang out. It's fun. It's a great time. And I got to thank you so much for wishing us a happy Good Friday. And, of course, Slava Ukraini, long live the Lee Spring Army. And also a whole bunch of other stuff happened today. For example, I may, because we're planning on doing gun review videos again in the future at some point. We don't know when, because we're trying to figure out how to fit that into everything else, because, you know, believe it or not, just doing what we do, it's actually a lot to make a video per day nearly, and then a live stream every day. That actually takes up most of the day, each and every day. But we are planning on trying to get back to gun reviews and do some reviews on equipment that would be used by armed forces around the world if we can, and we did end up getting a pretty cool, neat little thing that we'll be able to review in the future today. It's kind of a loner deal, but we'll be seeing if we can show that to all of y'all in the future, along with a couple of other cool things, because we're wanting to get to doing that, and if we can, again, I'd be pretty happy with it. We actually have a video that is still on the chopping block from 4 months ago when we filmed both of the videos side by side. The AK-74 was the only one that made it out, and then we had an entire video filmed for a P90, which is the FN Herstal, or the Belgian weird-looking submachine gun. We never put that video out. It's still on the chopping block right now, and I don't know if it ever will come out because the first video didn't meet up to our expectations of quality and standards, and so we're actually thinking about going and refilming these videos and making them completely different than we did the first time. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And now it is finally time for us to get onto that live chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this live chat question is going to go to Will Callahan, who says, how can Russia entertain the idea of war with Europe? What does Russia even have left militarily?
Can you reread that one again?
Yeah. It said, how can Russia entertain the idea of war with Europe, and what has Russia got left militarily?
They can entertain the idea because they're crazy, I suppose. And what they have left is not that much. We assume that it's in almost every single category. It's about half or less than half of what they had at the start of the war, inventory-wise, for equipment. So with that, I hope that does address that live chat well. Thank you so much, Hal Rose, for sponsoring it. And also, Matthew, John P. Seeker LSA asked, do you have a Galil Ace? No, I do not, and I never want to have one. I hate to say that because I know some people love the Galil Ace. I honestly cannot stand them. I think they're kind of goofy. I'll show Matthew what this thing looks like just to show it. This is it. Like the Galil Ace is an Israeli like AK bastard. I don't like them, and I just don't think they're cool.
Straight up honest, I'm not a big fan of IWI as a company. Like not because of politics or anything like that, just because of the guns they make. I'm not a huge fan of the design. They always come out looking a little bit, maybe a little poorly designed in my opinion. But I guess they work, and they have been used in battle before. So, you know, if that's your gun, that's for you. But me personally, like people are going to hate to hear this. Daniel Defense, I have one of those, and they work very well. And if Daniel Defense is listening, sponsor me. Sponsor us, please.
Begging. They're literally begging, please. But beyond that, I don't really like the Galil Ace. It's just a personal preference thing. Like, if you want an AK, get an AK. Like, if you want a AR, get an AR. You can't do what the Israelis did and try and mix the two. I just don't jive with that. I personally don't agree with it. I think it's an affront to God, and I think that this is heresy. The best I can describe it. That I just don't like them. And someone out there actually tried to push a Galil onto me, like tried to make me get their Galil, and it did not matter. I could not mentally try and think about getting a Galil. I just don't like them. I just absolutely cannot stand these things. And I've never even shot one because they say it operates a lot like an AK, but at that point, it's like, why not just have an AK? You know, because you're already pretty much there. Just go a little bit farther, get an AK-74 or an AKM or an AK-47 or something like that. It just doesn't make much sense to me. But anyways, I will say that my favorite company is the let me think. My favorite company.
Oh wait, we're talking about favorite company overall for the gun market, like as a whole, or like the ones that we actually have.
The ones you've experienced. You don't have to own it. You just have to have at least shot the gun to like it.
Well, I can tell you, I haven't shot this gun, but if I had to pick a company that I'm a really big fan of that I haven't really shot before, just based on the design of the guns, I would say HK, hands down. The only problem is
you shot HK.
I'm not even gonna. Which one did I shoot?
The MP5. Remember we shot that HK MP5.
Oh, yeah, I remember that now. Yeah, the MP5 is one of them that I've shot, but I'm talking really more about the 416 and also like the civilian versions as well, the 5.56 MR and also the 7.62. I like the design of those guns. They're very nice and like beefy looking ARs. The only problem is I just can't really like get into HKs that much because they're way too damn expensive. But they're cool guns for the looks of it.
Well, I think everyone knows what my favorite company is going to be. It's Effin Herstal, baby. I love Effin Herstal. It is one of the best firearm companies out there currently that you can get in the civilian market. They make amazing M4s. They make amazing P90s. They make a civilian version of the P90 called the PS90. PS90. There it is. It's got the legal barrel length, but you can form to this thing to shorten it down to be like a normal P90, and that's what the normal barrel looks like on a P90.
You know, the guns I've been really looking at here recently, a whole bunch. That is cool. P90 is cool, but it's just a lot of plastic in my opinion, a little too much.
Yeah.
But the B&T APC9K Pro, that is a super cool gun. I think that's the gun that was just adopted by the U.S. Army's their new machine gun for the first time in a long time. Yeah, it's that one right there, the guy shooting in that picture, by the way. Not that one with the stock, but it's the one with the collapsible stock. Yeah, that one. That is really cool. I think it shoots 9 mil. But once again, B&T is another one of those expensive companies, like their highway robbery with their prices. But super cool design, though.
And also, I'm seeing someone say short P90 is legal. Now, if you form to it, you can actually get a PS90, and then you can form to it to have the barrel shortened, and then you can have that approved in shorter time than it would be to buy it as an SBR, and then you can actually have a short-barreled P90. So it's possible. It is legally possible to have something like that done. But really, my favorite one of Effin Herstal's guns is the M4A1. And I'll show you all this right here. It is actually this one, it's just a normal FN M4A1. It is made exactly to their Army pattern that they made for their U.S. Army contract. So it's literally the exact same thing that a U.S. infantryman would be provided if you served in the U.S. Army. So this thing is really cool. We have one, and I gotta say it's the best rifle in my collection. Absolutely, by far the best. I was able to shoot 600 yards with this thing accurately, just using normal Winchester target ammo. I mean, it was doing very well at that, and I was really happy with the rifle. Love the rifle. I think it's great. It holds well in the hand. Of course, the AR platform is one of the best out there. You can't really top it. So this thing, honestly, #1. And for that reason, that's why I love Effin Herstal. And I know some people are like, what is he saying, effing Herstal, or is he saying F in Herstal? And I'm saying F in Herstal, but because of the way I say it, it sounds like Effin Herstal. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And and with that, we're on to the next one, actually.
And also, I saw JC9 say the NFA needs to be repealed, and he said that in the live chat, by the way.
Oh,
and have y'all seen the new... Huh?
We don't touch that kind of stuff.
What, about guns?
Oh, about the an act, the National Firearms Act. That's a political thing.
That's political? So how's that political?
Well, it's an act of Congress. It's something that you can talk about on a political vein.
Huh, okay. Well, I don't see how that's political, but go ahead.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, it's an act of Congress. It's like saying the National Firearms Act of 1986 isn't a political thing. It is. And, I don't really know if we...
I mean, that's up to you. I don't see how it's political, but it's up to you.
Well, what were you going to say about it?
He was talking about repealing it, and I was about to say, me personally, I've honestly forgotten my thought, to be straight up honest with you.
Oh, well, with that, we are on to the next one, then.
All right, and our next one is going to go to BC Skyman, who throws in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, BC, for that support, as always. And he says, from Ivan III in 1478, the Russian Empire was built on genocide, he says, and conquest of indigenous peoples of Siberia were genocidal, and the Soviet Union continued Russia's history of genocide, and Russia is now committing genocide in Ukraine, and happy Easter.
And I gotta thank you so much for the massive amount of support, BC Skyman, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because it is folks like you who helped make this thing possible. And that is largely true. The Russians have gone through pretty much the entirety of Eastern Europe and throughout pretty much East Asia, genociding their way through. The Circassians are just a small example within the Caucasus Mountain region and Georgia. But there is a lot of other genocides that they have committed. Of course, against the Ukrainians multiple times. For example, the Holodomor during Soviet times was one of the most famous genocides conducted against the Ukrainians. They have also conducted... well, I can't say that one on YouTube, but there was this kind of of a very bad thing that happened as they started to march back across Europe during World War II. It's called the blank of Europe, and it rhymes with grape. So y'all can fill in the dots and go Google that one if you want, but it was an absolute atrocity. They've also committed atrocities against the Finns. They've, of course, committed atrocities against everyone in East Asia, over here in the eastern part of Russia, and also moving on down into the area of the Stand Series countries, they have, of course, committed a lot of atrocities down here. Not only that, but in the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, they also committed a large amount of atrocities there. They've also supported oppressive regimes, such as the Communist Party of China, which went through and started to conduct large genocides during their reign in China up till the present day, and also up in the past during the Chinese Civil War from 1947, well actually it was more like 1945 to 1949. There has been an absolute lot that has gone on where the Russians really have conducted a large amount of genocides. And that's really what their national history is based on. But, you know, really a lot of national histories have been based on genocides. Very few have, actually. One of the countries I would have to say has actually conducted the least. Well, actually, that's actually really hard to say. You know, the least number of genocides, or the least number of killed from the genocide. So I don't really know how to even quantify that. But beyond that, the Russians have had a very bad track record. And if you're not a Western Russian, then you're pretty much on the short end of the stick whenever it comes to being on the working end or the negotiating end with the Russians. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, because that would be very true for sure. And I got to thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and happy Easter to you, BC Scam, and I hope we see you here on the Sunday night fundraiser. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one is going to go to James Carg, who puts in the 20 and says, first, I wish to say good luck to you all. And second, more and more as war becomes seemingly inevitable, I find myself saying a new phrase that feels hauntingly true. He says, quote unquote, each day of peace is a gift and not a given right.
And I gotta thank you so much for supporting. I completely agree with that. It is a gift given, not necessarily a right. And let me see here. I want to make sure to get that one so that I can reread it again, just to make sure I quote it properly. Let's see. Second more. See me. I find it. Let's see. Each day of peace is a gift. I would agree with that completely, James. 100%. Each day of peace is a gift. Usually the world is at a constant state of war. So whenever there's peacetime, it's actually a blessing. And a lot of people don't get that. A lot of people think that the world is supposed to be in a state of peace, and that is its normal state. The normal state of the world historically is a constant state of war. Of course, not world wars. World wars are a fairly modern concept. Well, not that modern if you include the 7 Years' War, which is technically the First World War, which happened in the middle of the 1700s. But if you don't count that, because most people really don't count it, then world wars are a very modern concept. But there was always wars going on in every corner of the world, pretty much at all times, because that's just the natural state of things. Peace and peacetime is something that is very fortunate to be in, and something that one can consider oneself to be blessed in, especially the United States over really the past 70 years, having peace inside of our own country, of course being involved in wars abroad, but still having peace inside of our own country, not being heavily affected by wars happening overseas. That is a massive blessing, because many other countries cannot say the same. And so with that, I've got to thank you so much for the support, James, in throwing in that comment, because as the world does get further and further on into that, I think people do need to appreciate peacetime, because peacetime is something that was hard fought to achieve. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Frostbright Productions, who puts in a $20 donation as well and says, it's my opinion that based on what little I know of through history, that a country like Poland declaring war or turning into a war economy early on could be a way to boost production and defense and training. And what do you think?
That's actually correct, Frostbright. I don't know why I'm always wanting to say frostbite. You know, like the actual medical infliction, you know. But beyond that, I do have to say that when a country like Poland is turning into a war economy or is trying to boost its armed forces early on, that's usually a sign of things to come. countries usually like to shave off their armed forces as best as they possibly can because it makes the government more lean spending wise and they can spend that money elsewhere on different projects. So when you see a country like Poland massively militarizing and spending loads of money on building up a massive armed force, the likes of which isn't seen across the whole of Europe, you know that that's got to be for a reason. They're seeing something going on in the future where they think they'll have to have that expense as a necessity, and that leads me to believe that there probably is a good litmus test indicator in what the Poles are doing, showing that there is probably a war on the horizon, and they're probably one of the few countries right now that is actually preparing for this upcoming war. And so I would completely agree with your assessment, Frostbright. I think that that is a very astute observation, and it does look like the Polish are trying to get ready so that way they can boost their production and defense and training for what they believe is an inevitable war that they cannot avoid at this point. But with that, I got to thank you so much once again for the massive support. I also got to thank you for putting the LSA Eagle in your profile picture. Really cool. And with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you so much once again.
And the next one goes to the Mr. Anderson, who puts in a $20 donation and says, has there been a lot of troop buildup on the Russian or Belarusian borders with NATO?
There hasn't been an excessively high amount, Mr. Anderson. Great question, by the way. And the reason why there hasn't been a massive buildup of Russian armed forces is because there's not really a lot of Russian armed forces left that are not inside of Ukraine. Yes, the Russian armed forces is technically around 1 million strong, but the ground forces, I believe, is only 660,000 strong. And out of that 660,000 of them, we actually believe that at this point, around 500,000 of them are inside of occupied Ukraine at the moment. So most of the Russian ground forces are actually in Ukraine and fighting that war right now. So there isn't really a lot for them to dedicate outside of that war to places like the Baltics or Finland or anywhere else for that matter. And that's why I believe they're building up these two brand new armies of 16 divisions inside of the Leningrad military district, so that way they actually have some fighting forces that they can dedicate to areas like the Baltics or Finland if they ever wanted to or if they ever chose to. And so I hope that does address that well. We're not seeing that at the moment, but I think that's why they're raising those two new armies, so that way we might see that in the future. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Mr. Anderson, and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you help to make this thing possible. And if it wasn't for folks like you who support this channel and help us keep it running, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Ari Sawini, the Kiwi wife and Finn, who puts in a $20 donation and says a good Easter to everyone, and I'll say, and also happy Easter to you as well, Kiwi wife and Finn.
And thank you so much for the support, Ari Sweeney, Kiwi wife and Finn, for helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope y'all have a happy Easter too. Y'all are probably going to get to Easter a little bit quicker than us because of y'all's time zone in the world, so y'all are going to be having Easter a little early compared to us. But I hope y'all will still have an amazing one nevertheless. It's going to be incredibly fun, of course. Time for Hamley. Oh, man, you see what I'm doing right there, man? Trying to throw in the spam advertisement. But beyond that, it's going to be a great time. I got to thank you so much for the support, Ari Sweeney. We're going to have a happy Easter back here behind the scenes. And LSA to you. Long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
And our next one is going to go to the Truth Sleuth, who puts in a $31 donation. That's their third ever super chat of the stream, so thank you very much for that support. They said, any news on Kadyrov? He seems to be laying low after the Moscow tragedy.
And yes, we actually do have some news right after the Moscow tragedy. Kadyrov tried to come in when the guys were arrested up in the area around Bryansk. He tried to come in and say,
Don, actually, it was Don. My guys are Don who got them, Don.
Because the reason why, and I'll explain this, the reason why is that Chechnya is technically a Muslim autonomous republic or an Islamic autonomous republic. And so by them arresting these guys, it looks like it's the good Islamics beating up the bad Islamics, at least for the Russian public mindset. And that's what the Russians are trying to propagate. So that way there's not Russian on Islamic violence inside of Russia in retaliation. So that's why they came out and made this statement. It was more so of a political move inside of Russia than it was an actual true statement. Because from what I know, it was not the Kadyrovites that arrested these guys. It was the FSB, if I'm correct, Matthew.
I'm not really sure, to be honest with you.
I'm not really sure either, but I think it was the FSB that ended up, lending an ear to that one guy, He really got an earful, But beyond that, to answer that, he kind of has been laying low beyond that, but it appears he came out for just a moment to make that public statement. But still, thank you so much for the support, the Truth Sleuth, and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope I was able to address that well, and thank you for being one of our Australian viewers. If it wasn't for folks like you who are up at a odd time of day, for us, you know, odd is relative. For you, it's a normal time of day. For us, it'd be an odd time of day. But if it wasn't for folks like you up at that time of day over there in Australia watching this channel and enjoying it enough to support it, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on rolling, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Marion Deemert, the longtime channel legend as well, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Marion, for that support as well. Hey! And Marion said, "Slava Ukraine, Hero Slava, and give Ukraine help."
And I agree, Marion Deemert, give the Ukrainians the help they need. I would say that they need lots of it, and hopefully we'll see that soon by the United States government. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Marion Deemert, and helping this channel to keep on running. And Slava Ukraini, Herom Slava, and long live the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Scott Kilgore, who puts in a $20 donation. And Scott did not leave a comment, but thank you very much, Scott, for putting in that very generous support and helping to keep us running and keep our work a-flowing. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say, thank you, Scott. Thank you so much for helping this channel to keep on running and helping it to be possible. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. But still, thank you so much once again. Thank you for being one of our Australian viewers. And thank you so much for enjoying this channel and helping it to be possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to That Mom, who's also been around for a very long time on the channel, who puts in a $20 donation and says, "Call your family." And there it is. And she said, "Happy Easter, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt, and also Happy Easter to you as well." And she said, "So happy for y'all getting the silver play button." And I'm so happy for that as well, That Mom. I'm very happy as well. We're getting two of them as well, because one's for the Enforcer's office and one's for my office. So I was so glad to see that two were coming, because otherwise we'd have to cut it in half and put half in his office and half in mine. So we don't have to do that. But when we get it, like I said before, we will do an unboxing video, and we'll probably put that on a short, which is that vertical format. And y'all know what a short is. I don't know why I'm trying to explain that. But thank you very much, That Mom, for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you so much for the support, That Mom. Call your family. Call your family. But beyond that, I gotta say, I'm so happy to get the silver play button as well. We were actually for a minute wondering whose office we were going to put this thing in. But luckily we don't have to worry about that, because we are getting two. Beyond that, however, I do thank you so much for wishing us a happy Easter. We're going to have a great one behind the scenes. I hope you all have a great one. And when we come on air that night, I hope that everyone's had an amazing Easter, and that's just a great way to round out the day. Hopefully we have some fairly good news, nothing crazy going on Easter. Hopefully it'll be a bit more of a calmer day, but who knows? You know, only the future knows what the future may hold or bring. But still, thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running, helping it to be possible, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't have been able to be around long enough to actually get that silver play button. We would have disappeared a long time ago. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to BC Skyman, who puts in the 12 and says, "Test."
And it was a successful test. And I gotta thank you so much for the support, BC Skyman, and helping this channel to be possible, helping it to run, and helping this channel to keep on going. And also, Matthew, I was just wanting to quickly check, did we cover Steve T's?
Steve T. Let's see here. Steve T. Where is Steve T?
Steve T was a $20 super chat, New Zealand dollar super chat.
Let's see here. Steve T. Steve T is in here. He's under no dono, which is not the case. He put in a 20 New Zealand dollars. And Steve T said, "If Russia starts a wider war, do you think Kaliningrad and possibly other territory taken from Finland may be redistributed as part of redrawing the borders? And this would be easy to tell Russia, you do this, we take that."
And that's possible, Steve T. If the Russians were to start a wider war with the Kaliningrad area and other territory taken, they might be able to redistribute it as a part of a redrawing agreement. But redrawing agreements rarely ever happen, because no one wants to give up anything in exchange for something else. They usually want to keep what they have and take something else. So redrawing agreements historically are incredibly rare, if not ever seen. It's possible, though. Theoretically, you could try and make that happen but the chances of that happening are probably fairly slim. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And thank you so much once again for the support, Steve T, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. And so thank you so much once again. I hope I was able to answer that question fairly well, at least with the limitations that have been seen historically with those kinds of this and that agreements, and also with how the Russians would probably want to go about that. It would be pretty tough to try and ask for it, but you could still try nevertheless. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Panama Floyd, the channel legend as well, who puts in a 20. And can we address this one?
I guess we can. I mean, I don't. It's not really like, trying to pick anything on religion. It's just more so asking a question, I suppose. So yeah, I think that's fine.
Just wanted to make sure, because Panama Floyd says questions for the Christians in the group are the Protestants, I believe, Catholics and Orthodox Easter on the same day.
And I have no idea. That's why I was going to allow that question to go through, because I actually don't know. Because technically the Eastern Orthodox Christmas is actually a different day than Protestant Christmases, and I believe Catholic Christmas as well. So I don't know. Maybe it is. Of course, not getting into religion here, because we also avoid religion largely like we do politics on this channel. But if you are a Protestant, a Catholic, or a Orthodox Christian, let us know in the chat when the Easters are, because I'd be fairly interested to know when those Easters actually are, because I know that ours is, well, the Protestant Easter is going to be the Sunday, but I don't know if the Catholic one and the Orthodox one are different. Apparently, the Orthodox one is in May, so we're already getting a little bit of word in that apparently it's a completely different time of the year. So let's see here. Russian Orthodox 2 weeks late. Orthodox different, the others are the same. So I'm guessing that the Catholics and the Protestants are on the same page, and then the Orthodox Church is the one that's different. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least as far as the live chat is concerned. And I thank you so much for the support, Panama Floyd, and getting everyone unified in the chat to answer the question, are all the Easters the same, or are they different? But with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Anita, last name, or not last name, but first name Jenna, last name Tolls, who put in a $10 donation and said, I missed you.
We missed you. Oh my lord, that name is getting worse. I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh my god. But still, thank you so much for the support, Anita. We missed you too. And we're happy to have you back, and we're happy that you're here with us tonight. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one is going to go to Scott Kemp, who puts in a $10 donation and says Turkey has large forces as well. And what are they up to?
Oh, God. The biggest question of the century, what the Turks doing. The Turks are doing Turkey things. I don't, the Turkey is doing Turkey things. I have no idea to describe what they're doing. It would take like 3 hours to describe what they're doing and why they're doing it. But Turkey does have a pretty big armed force. The problem with Turkey, though, is that their armed force isn't really that modern. It's more so modernized old stuff, kind of like the Russians. In a sense, they're kind of like the Russians of NATO as far as their armed forces go, because they modernize stuff, but it's old stuff that's being modernized. So they're like eking a little bit of extra performance out of it, but not a lot. And it's mostly a cost-cutting kind of a deal. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, because even trying to get into what the Turks are up to is a whole other thing for a whole other channel. I mean, like, it literally took a channel called Crowd, 3 documentaries that were an hour and a half long each to explain what the Turks doing. I don't even want to touch on it because like the Turks are their own thing. They have their own reasons for doing what they do. They don't align with NATO or Russia or China or anyone. They're just a free agent out there doing whatever. But with that, thank you so much once again for support, Scott Kemp. I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Stu Bedasso, who puts in a $10 donation and says, happy birthday to Matt. That's not even my birthday, but I'll take that. He says, do you think Ukraine is entitled to use the weapons they manufacture on their soil?
I think they are. I would say, yeah. Who in the world's going to tell them otherwise? It's not like they're going to cut off the provision of weapons to Ukraine because the weapons are made inside of Ukraine and they're approved to be manufactured by the Ukrainian government. So I think they're completely justified in using their own weapons on their own soil. Why not? I believe they're justified in using their weapons wherever they want, even if it's not inside of Ukraine, even if it's inside of Russia. But with that, I thank you so much for the support, stupid asshole, and I thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. Because it's only a stupid asshole like you who can ask such a question, and not only that, enjoy the channel enough to help it to keep running it. So thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Flash One, who puts in the $10 donation without a comment, and also Uncovered Cube, who put in a $5, also without a comment. But thank you, Flash and Uncovered Cube, very much for that support and helping to keep us running. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you both, Flash and Uncovered Cube, for the support and helping this channel to keep running. Both of y'all are making this channel possible. And if it wasn't for y'all throwing in y'all support and enjoying this channel enough to do such a thing, we wouldn't be able to be here right now covering this news and talking on this show. And so, thank you so much once again to the voltages. The voltages, I tell you. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you to both of you once again.
And the next one goes to Carrie Ann LSA, who puts in a 5 and says, doing great as always, guys. And thank you very much, Carrie Ann. And also Nick as well. She said that the first LSA couple sends their appreciation.
And we appreciate y'all to the first LSA couple. I got to thank you both, Nick Still Thinking and Carrie Ann, LSA. I like the name change, for being here tonight. And thank you so much for saying that we're doing great as always. We are trying our damnedest to do our best. And if it wasn't for folks like y'all who supported this channel and helped us, we wouldn't be able to even be here to try to do our best. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we appreciate your appreciation appreciatively. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Octavian Timarasonu, who I butchered their last name again. Sorry about that, Octavian. He puts in a 5. And yes, he puts in a 5 and says, speculative. The drone strike in Romania could possibly be Russia signaling that they can strike the newly constructed Brelia Bridge over the Danube.
It's entirely possible that that could be the threat. He also hears the Brelia Bridge right here that Octavian Timarasonu is talking about. That is really impressive, actually.
That's a big bridge.
Look, it's the flag of Romania. But beyond that, it is a beautiful bridge, actually. It's a massive suspension bridge. Really nice looking, actually. I gotta say, I like the style. Some bridges these days are kind of losing what makes bridges look cool. But that is really neat. I gotta say, I'm just a big fan. I think it will last much longer and much better than the Francis Scott Key Bridge, because the pillars are actually on the very edges of the river instead of inside of it. But then the Francis Scott Key Bridge can do that. But that's a whole other story for a whole other time. But beyond that, I do thank you so much for the support, Octavian Timarasanu, and maybe that was their way of trying to show that they could do that, because it's not that far away. I think the base of that bridge is probably about, it's exactly 7 miles away from where the base of the bridge is. So that is quite concerning indeed, I would say. And I gotta thank you so much for the support, Octavian Timarasanu, being one of our Romanian viewers, actually, and supporting this channel and helping us to keep it running, and throwing in your theory, a Romanian theory, on why that happened and what that could have meant. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Badger Bro, who puts in a 5 and says, if any NATO country was at war with Russia, you can bet Chris's mom they would be targeting those refineries.
Man, Chris's mom isn't that big of a bet, though. I mean, everyone's had Chris's mom. But beyond that, I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I would have to say, they would be targeting the refineries. If a NATO country was at war with Russia, they would be targeting critical infrastructure from day one. Because that's one of the ways that you win a war, is just knocking out the ability for a country to even exist. And a country exists a lot through its modern technologies. Power plants, oil refineries, oil silos, oil storage, all that kind of stuff. And so with that, thank you for the support, Badger Bro. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to KPH5225, who puts in a €6. And that's their first ever super chat of the stream, by the way. So thank you very much, KPH, or kilometers per hour, for that support very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
Man, if you're moving at 5,225 kilometers per hour, you speedy. I mean, that's really fast, man. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, you might be able to feel the wind in your hair at that speed. You know, like at least I'm assuming.
That's pretty fast. It might feel the rocks as well.
Man, goodness. I would hate to be going 5,225 kilometers per hour. I'm not going to lie. I feel like you'd be going so fast at that point, like your skin would just melt all over your face. But beyond that, thank you so much for your first super chat to the channel and helping us keep this thing running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you who appreciate this channel and found it worthwhile to support, we wouldn't be able to be on air right now. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one is going to go to Ed, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Irish Ed, for that support. He says, hey, Enforcers, Irish Ed here. He says, question, where are the F-16s going to take off, land, and / get stored? And I heard the runway needs to be perfect. Just an Irish question.
Shamrock. Oh, the Shamrock. Oh, it's a romantical thing of Ireland. But beyond that, thank you so much for support, Irish Ed. And that is a great question. From what we understand, the F-16s are going to be flown into Ukraine, and they're going to operate from Ukrainian airfields. That's at least what I know at the moment, but it seems as though there is a possibility that they may actually be operated out of a NATO country like Poland. But I'm having a feeling that that's probably unlikely. We'd probably like to send them into Ukraine, where they're flown and operated from inside of Ukraine. That's what I would believe. And so I hope that does address that question fairly well. And thank you so much once again, Irish Ed, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you help to make this thing possible. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one. And
the next one goes to A-Star, who puts in a 5 and says, how's Moldova doing?
Moldova is doing well. I mean, they're not doing that bad. That's the best thing I can say right now. It doesn't seem like there's any armed conflict that's going to be happening there, because the Russian attempt to create a false flag out of the helicopter appeared to have failed outright, and it seems like things are tense but stable in Moldova at the moment from what we're able to tell. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, A-Star. I hope that does address that question fairly well. And with that, we are actually going to be moving on to our next one really quickly, which is from Agent B7, who threw in a 5. And Agent B7 said the fall pattern of the down flanker suggests that it was disabled in a steep climb. That's the only way it would end up in a flat spin like that. And that's possible as well. Probably more possible than my original theory that it was in some kind of a steep bank. It's probably more so of a climb. But that may be showing that it was actually taking off from Belbek when it was shot down. So that's actually a very interesting theory right there, Agent B7, and what it could be supposing. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and that one from Agent B7 was actually the next one in the spreadsheet, but the next one is going to go to Ari Soini, who puts in a 5 and says, your thoughts on the RK-62 Finnish service rifle due to be replaced with the Sacco M23?
Let me see here. Let me go see what the RK-62 is based on. And sorry about that, man, because I saw it, and it was like 2 super chats early, and I was like, oh, man, I think we missed it, so I was going to try and quietly go back and cover it. But let's see here.
It's all good.
It's all good, man. It's all good. But let's see here. Sacco M23. Let me go find that. So, Matthew, for the Sacco, would you like to see the Sacco?
Let's see it.
All right, so here is, first off, the RK-62. Ugh. I'm not a big fan of this.
Looks like shite.
It does. I think that's I don't think that's far from it. Yeah, I'm not really digging these. Did they added the prison shank to the front of this? They gonna be stabbing your kidneys with that. I don't like that too much. Yeah, I'm not. Oh, look at this one. This one's slightly upgraded, but still, I'm not a big fan. So I don't really like this. It looks like it's supposed to be some kind of a variant of an AK-style platform. I'm not a big fan. So I think Matthew's going to be really happy with what the Sacco M23 is, because it looks kind of like an HK416 a little bit.
Oh, yeah, I like that. Let's see. Is Sacco or Sacco makes that? Where's that company from?
I'm guessing it's a Finnish company.
Yeah, I've never seen that before, but I like the design. The M-Lock's pretty nice.
Well, Matthew, you know what they say about this company, Matthew. If you haven't seen the Sacco, then you're finished.
Oh?
Oh? You know.
I think that one went over my head.
You know, Finland, finished.
Oh, yeah,
good one. But beyond that, the Sacco 23, not bad. I think it's a great modernization. Great to see Finland's moving over to an AR platform and getting away from that AK, that nasty AK. But with that, I hope that does address that well. I hope that answers that fairly well. But it's just based off of its appearance, not talking about its actual performance, just its appearance. I really like the appearance of the Sacco M23 a lot more than the RK-62 by a long shot. But still, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that well. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one is going to go to Badger Bro, who puts in a 2. And thank you very much, Badger Bro, for that support. He says, Romania.
Hot
And he puts
dog.
in a hot dog emoji and also a fly, too.
Oh.
You don't want flies in the hot dogs, but what about the flies making the hot dogs? How's that work?
Aw, man. Extra relish. Aw, man. Tonight's show is canceled. Aw, man. Aw. Quick upshift. Aw. You're breaking the transmission. Aw. But beyond that, thank you so much for the support, Badger Bro, and helping this channel to keep on running. It is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And I greatly appreciate you throwing in a little reference to Romania. No disrespect to the Romanians. We love the Romanians. It's just that there's a certain thing that happened at some point where another person that we don't necessarily like on this channel because they've made it their life's passion to try and make our lives a living hell. But this person in particular was on Twitter and they were playing some, remember Matthew, it was like some Inspector Clouseau music, and they sat there and said, "Oh, Romania," and they clicked on something, and then they went scrolling down, and y'all wouldn't believe it, y'all. It was Chris's mom's like favorite thing, and it was just there on screen for like 3 seconds, and this guy's eyes just went huge, and he went, "Oh my god!" And then he went, and while it was still playing, he went, "Yuck!" And then he clicked off it. It was the funniest thing ever. So that's what.
And the funny thing is, he sat there and stared and watched for like 5 seconds. And I was like, the dude's just sitting here staring at this. And by the time, everybody else was like, "Oh my god!" Like, "Oh my god!" He's just sitting there staring. It's like, his reaction was either really slow or he was looking at that video, one or the other.
He forgot he was live. That's the honest answer. He forgot he was live. He was like, "Oh man, look at this." But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, Badger Bro. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Mad Jack F, who puts in the 5. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support. He says the LSA is asking for the Marmot.
And we all gonna get it. It's the Marmot. Oh!
Cake the rodent, head your service.
What would you like, Governor? Would you like some rock, some blam, or some of that cake, Governor? What would you want? What would you want? Oh,
see, the
man.
biggest symbolism in this whole picture here is the marmot is huge and looming over the fly, but the fly is still nagging at the marmot, still trying to get his rock, but the marmot won't let him have it. And in fact, the marmot just got done defending his rock just a short while ago, and he's so caked up he could smash the fly. But Enforcer, what say you?
Smashing the fly with absolute voluptuous ass cheeks. Just like crush that thing like a hydraulic press. But beyond that, I gotta say, I thank you so much, Mad Jack F, for the support. You let us get on here and show Alan the Marmot with its absolute cake, caked up, rocked up, and plumbed up, standing over the fly in pure dominance. I gotta say, Matthew, this is the perfect epitome of the Lee Spring Army version of the Chad versus Soy Jack meme. You know, because the fly is the Soy Jack, and the Chad is the Marmot.
The Chad is the marmot. The marmot's top 2 teeth got chopped off in an unfortunate accident with a saw.
It got shawls on! But with that, thank you so much for the support, Magic F. I hope that does address that well. Y'all all love this rodent. I love the rodent. Everyone loves Alan. Alan! But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you once again.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a 2 from Brittany Taz, who did not leave a comment. But thank you very much, Brittany, for the $2 donation. And like Wimpy said, I'll pay you a 2 from Tuesday. He actually didn't say that. He said that you'd take a hamburger and pay you. I pay you something from Tuesday. I don't think he said he'll pay you 2 either. I don't think he actually paid anything, actually. I think he was just a mooch. But anyways, moving on from that, we're actually moving into our live chat questions. What? And up first, we have the Morse code decoders of the stream. We have Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Rumpelstiltskin, David Millsaps, and Tasha Bananas. They said the LSA Signal Corps Morse code copy report is Poland is on the steady path for war, and Russia may not be in store, and long live the LSA.
And that's the sound of money! And y'all hit that dead on the nail. That's the jackpot. That was the Morse code message of the night. Y'all get that dead on. That was absolutely correct. And I got to congratulate you all for getting that correct on the 765th day of the war. And so with that, thank you all so much once again. And it's time for us to start getting into an absolute free-for-all. It's the live chats. And Matthew, what do we got?
And up first, we have a question from O-Tubes, who says, I've seen somewhere online today that Russia want to hit NATO by 2025, and have you heard this?
I have not heard that. And usually they don't televise the war plans a year in advance. So I would have to say I'm down it. I'm calling cap. But it's not out of the question. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Schmog, who says, I wasn't one of the last cavalry charges made by any army made at the beginning of World War II by the Polish cavalry.
Actually, the last cavalry charge didn't happen in Poland. You're right, there was cavalry charges that happened in Poland in 1939. Did you know that, Matthew?
I actually did not.
Well, I'll bet you didn't know that the last cavalry charge in history was actually the U.S. Army in the Philippines.
No, I definitely didn't know that.
Let me type this in right here, Matthew. Cavalry charge. Last U.S. Army cavalry charge. 16th of January, 1942. That's when the last cavalry charge in history happened. And I gotta tell y'all that this emblem right here, I mean, this thing really is going. Like, this thing is going. I mean, like, they're speeding up here.
That horse is on crack.
Oh,
man.
That's it. You and me
tell
have the
that
same
horse
idea.
to get off that crack.
Oh, man. Dude, this sun, like, that's what the sun looks like when you're on crack. It looks like this thing down here.
That's a visual of what's happening in the horse's mind while he's on this crack stupor.
That's it, dude. The sun is saying, you have to strip copper off of the AC units. You got to do it. And the horse is going.
And the horse
said, anyways, moving on. So this is the last cavalry charge in the history of the U.S. cavalry, was really the last one in the world. So to quickly go down here, let me see here. So, 26th Cavalry, consisting mostly of Philippine scouts, was the last U.S. cavalry regiment to engage in horse-mounted warfare. When Troop G encountered Japanese forces at the village of Morong in 16th January of 42, Lieutenant Ramsey ordered the last cavalry charge in American history, and in world history for that matter. It would not be until the 22nd of October 2001, when American soldiers would enter combat on horseback again, when members of the 12-man Operational Detachment Alpha 595, accompanying members of the Afghanistan Northern Alliance, rode into battle at Kobaki in the Balkh province. I don't know if that counts, because did they fight on horseback, or did they just ride in on horseback and then dismount? Because then they're dismounted infantry, and that's not really cavalry, that's just dismounted infantry. But anyways, moving on from that. During the retreat to Bataan, the 26th was heavily outnumbered by an infantry force supported by tanks. They drove off the surprised Japanese. Due to a shortage of food, they found it necessary to butcher their mounts, and the regiment was converted to two squadrons. One, a motorized rifle squadron, and the other, a mechanized squadron, utilizing the remaining scout cars and Brin carriers. Just in case y'all don't know, when they said they found it necessary to butcher their mounts, that means that they killed the horses and ate them. Yeah, you know, it kind of not a ceremonious end to the whole thing. I mean, yeah, they did win the battle, but right when they got done, they said, "Man, I'm so hungry, I could eat a horse." And then they turned around to look at the horses they rode in on, and were like, "That is dinner. We're going to be eating that tonight." But with that, I hope that does address that well, because yes, I was aware of the cavalry charges that happened in Poland in 1939, but the last one that actually happened was in 1942. So with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for throwing in an interesting point. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. And also, I saw Stu Bedasso saying in the live chat. He says, sorry about the last question. And nothing to be sorry about. There's nothing to scrutinize in the question. It was quite good. And he said, just living the dream. He says, have you seen the POF AR-10 platform gas piston versus tube?
What? What the hell? What was that question? I don't even understand. Reread that one again for me, please.
Man, you're roasting his new question. He said, have you seen the POF AR-10 platform gas piston versus tube?
I have not. Do you know what he's talking about, Matthew? Because I know he's talking about the AR-10 and some kind of different kind of a gas stroke piston, but I don't know what he's actually talking about.
We'll see. POF. Let's see, POF. A POF appears to be a company, from what I can tell. If that's what you're talking about, Stu, I have not seen POF's stuff before. But gas piston versus two, I'll be honest with you, that's over my pay grade. I know about guns a bit, but I don't know about them that well. So sadly, I couldn't translate any.
I would have to be entirely honest with you, stupid asshole. The only kinds of gas piston systems I know about are short stroke and long stroke. I've never heard of tube. So unfortunately, I'd have to declare ignorance on that and have to go and look into that a little bit more because I'd have no idea, to be entirely honest with you. But still, thank you so much once again for asking an interesting question. It's just sadly, I'm too ignorant to actually know about what you're talking about at the moment. I'll have to research more. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a super chat this time, which goes to KPH 5225 once again. He puts in a 6 this time. And it says, what is your opinion for Greece in geopolitically sensitive Alexandroupolis NATO base or Suda NATO base? Marmite forever.
Marmot forever, baby.
Marmot.
I think that's supposed to be the marmot, I think. But still, thank you for the support, KPH 5225. And my opinion on Greece is that it's a little greasy. I know, hot take. But hear me out. The name's Greece. Therefore, there must be Greece. Seems logical. I'm just kidding. Greece is a really cool country. Man, grease some boys. But anyways, I would have to be honest with you. I actually do not know about future NATO-based plans inside of Greece. We can try and see if those currently exist, because I don't know the names of NATO bases or joint operation bases that are in Greece. So let's see here. Let's go to the town right here. Is there a NATO base? This looks like it might be the base he's talking about. Not that big. It looks more like a commercial airport. And it's very close to Turkey, actually. Interesting. Very interesting. And then there is another one. A soda. Now, where's this? This is down on Crete. So, I would have to be honest. If I had to pick one or the other, I would probably pick the one up and let me make sure I get the town name correct again. Alexandroupolis. I think that's how you say it. I would have to pick this one because it's going to be closer to the action, which is going to be up here inside the Black Sea. So it'd probably be better to have the aircraft closer there, or if you wanted the security perimeter, you could base them out in Crete. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
In our next one, it's going to go to Uncovered Cube once again, who puts in a 2 and says, great stream tonight. Thanks for everything, and LSA.
And thank you so much for enjoying everything we do. We try our best. We try our best. And thank you for everything that you've done to help this channel to keep on running. And oh, there he goes. There he goes. Oh, man, you got it.
He was in here talking about, why don't you use some of that objective reality and the quantum theory and string theory and try to come around here with a little bit more of that relativity? It's like, dude, let's talk normal. Like, I can't even follow that. Come on.
Oh, why can't you just go full objective reality? Is that not
I know he was wanting to say, you peasant. He was just dying to say peasant.
Yes, I'm so sorry that you had to come off of your golden throne, sire, to come down here and talk to us brave peasants. I'm so sorry.
But beyond that, I don't know what that guy was on, but with that, I hope that does address that well, Uncovered Cube, and I hope you enjoyed the entertainment that came in right after your super chat. And so with that, we're back into the live chats again.
All right, so moving back into the live chats, back into them. This one goes to Sean Evans Hill, who says, are we really looking at war? What's really going on here? World war. What does Russia gain from it except death?
They gain nothing.
It's like they gain nothing. I was trying to think. I was like, what would they gain? Well, they're not going to win, so it's nothing. Huh? What?
It's not about what your country can do for you. It's about what you can do for Putin.
Hey! You're stacking spaghetti in the spaghetti jar. But with that, I gotta say, there's nothing for them to gain. So I don't really know why they're so gung-ho to talk about war like that, because it's not like they're getting anything out of it. So with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion, my lowly opinion.
The opinion of a driveled peasant.
But still with that, thank you so much once again for asking a good question. Very good one. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and also real quick, I saw Stupidasso. He had to put in a clarification. He said it's a gas piston actuated action versus the AR style gas tube.
Oh, direct
and
impingement.
follow.
Oh,
Yes, the enforcer will know about this one. But me personally, if you hand me AR, I say, oh, this is a good one if it shoots right. But beyond that, I don't know much else, to be perfectly honest with you. But enforcer, take it away.
Can you reference the last question and reread it to me again and replace the gas tube with direct impingement so that way I can understand the question?
They said, have you seen the POF AR-10 platform direct impingement versus tube?
You did. It's supposed to be short stroke versus direct impingement, but I have seen a gas piston, if that's what you're talking about, like a short stroke gas piston AR in real life, if I remember correctly, which was the LMT Defense ARs that you and me shot, Matthew. I believe you were there when we shot those, if I'm correct.
I believe.
So from what I understand, and I'm basing all of this knowledge off of an amazing friend of the channel who may or may not be here tonight. I'm not entirely sure. Let me check if they are. They are.
He's in here.
Hey, he's here. So he is here. So I'm basing my knowledge entirely off of this, if I'm getting this correct, because I believe those were short stroke gas piston ARs that we were shooting there. They're not long stroke, I believe, but well, I'll have to make sure here in a bit. But beyond that, the short stroke gas piston is pretty cool because it allows for the bolt to not heat up while you're shooting it. That's one thing I do remember that was incredibly cool about a short stroke gas piston. But the thing about that, though, is that you actually do suffer a marginal decrease in accuracy using a short stroke gas piston rifle. The direct impingement of the original AR design, well, really more so the original AR-15 design, because the AR... I believe it was the AR-180 actually used a short stroke gas piston, if I remember correctly. You actually do get more accuracy out of the direct impingement design of the original AR-15. But at the same time, there are some drawbacks to that. For example, direct impingement is a lot more difficult to work on out in the field or by a gunsmith, and short stroke gas pistols are just easier to take apart and deal with. Going off of that and going off of that principle, I'd have to say that there are advantages to having a short stroke gas piston, but to be quite honest, if accuracy is what you're looking for, then you can't beat direct impingement. Direct impingement would be better. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And I see a Crash saying short stroke is better in field conditions. Most likely so, and from what I understand, that's why the Estonians and New Zealand went with short stroke gas piston rifles, more so than the direct impingement that most countries go with, like the United States. We usually have direct impingement in our M4s. So I would have to say there is advantage. There's some inherent advantages to the short stroke gas piston. Easier to maintain, easier to clean, probably easier to use, but you do get a slight decrease in accuracy. Direct impingement it has some drawbacks where it's more difficult to maintain, more difficult to clean, but you do get increased accuracy out of it. So you have that going for it. So there's kind of like there's some pluses and minuses for each of them. It really just depends on what you're looking for. So if you're looking for increased accuracy, direct impingement. If you're looking for better performance in battlefield conditions over a longer duration of time, then the short stroke gas piston is what you'll be looking for. So let me see here if I'm correct. Let me go type in the AR-18. And let me make sure that this thing was a short stroke gas piston. And let's see here. It is a short stroke piston. Because I remember that the AR-18 was really cool for its time. Insert picture here. It's not great looking. Yes, I will say that. But it was good. I mean, it wasn't that bad. These things actually ended up being adapted and used by some people out there. Y'all may know them as well, let me actually make sure that we can get this correct. Oh my lord, come on. Because there was a lot of rifles that were actually inspired off of the AR-180, but it was never directly introduced into any service for an armed force around the world. Some of these ended up being used in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. But I can't find, let's see here. Oh, look, yeah, there it is, the IRA right there. And then the Lebanese forces of the National Liberation Front ended up using it as well. And then let's see here. Oh, Haiti uses AR-180s. Boy, barbecue must love that one.
Oh, barbecue. Oh, you said Haiti uses it?
Yeah, Haiti uses these AR-180s.
Also, you heard that that YouTuber guy, I watch him occasionally. I think his name is Arab or something like that. That guy was going down there to film a YouTube video in Haiti to basically document barbecue's rise to power down there, the gang leader. And he actually got kidnapped earlier today by one of barbecue's goons, and now they're holding him for $600,000 in ransom today. So I've always wondered when I watch that guy's videos, I'm like, he always goes and meets with the most deadly people. Like he met with the cartel hitman for one of the cartels in Mexico. And then he went down to try to meet with barbecue, and that one did not go well. So hopefully gets freed.
Man, I'm telling you what, the real investigative journalists out there, you got to have a lot of respect for them because they put themselves pretty much in the way of death to get a story. I mean, that is, you got to respect that a little bit. Like their dedication to just getting a story. I don't know if it's bravery or foolishness, but I'd actually have to lean more so to the side of bravery, in my opinion.
I don't know. To me, it's a little bit foolish because Haiti right now, with all the the turmoil it's having, it's pure chaos. They're barely able to survive right now and stuff, and the gangs are running the country basically. I mean, to walk into that and think that someone's not going to think, hey, look, here's an American right here. Let's just take him hostage and try to get some money off of him. And knowing the guy has a big platform, so everybody will know he's been kidnapped. To me, that seems a little bit foolish. But, I understand wanting to get the story, but I don't think any journalist is going to walk into that and be like, something's not going to happen to me. Surely enough, the guy knew he was walking into a super dangerous situation.
I would agree. Also, let's see. While we're talking about that, Matthew, I'm seeing an interesting thing in the chat, and I've seen you trying to deal with it for a while. And I gotta say, it is starting to look a little suspect. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know what's up. I've tried to get to the bottom of it because the fellow has been here for a good minute. So I'm trying to get to the bottom of it to give the benefit of the doubt, but seeing some strange things going on. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, I'm like, I've been over here and I'm like, what the hell is that? Like, every once in a while somebody will be saying, I'm like, well, what does that mean? I'm like, I don't get it. But we'll see. We'll find out hopefully. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is actually a super chat from Martin. And Martin puts in a €22 donation. And thank you very much, Martin, for that support. He says, upside of a baby is that I can finally catch a middle of the night live stream. And thanks for all the work and the updates.
And thank you so much, Martin, for the support and helping this channel and helping us keep this thing running. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep rolling. It means a lot to us. And also, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I bet you're exhausted because I've heard that babies keep people up pretty much all times of the day. But beyond that, I bet you it's a massive thing for you to be a parent. I'm supposing a father from the name. And I hope that you're having an amazing time with your child. And I hope that they grow up to be incredible and amazing and do everything that we could only hope to do. And so with that, thank you so much once again. Thank you for being here with us tonight. And I hope that you've been enjoying this live stream. I hope that this has been soothing a little bit. But still, thank you so much once again. Thank you for enjoying the work and the updates that we try and do because we try our best. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running and make this channel possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and with that, we're moving back into our live chat questions. And at this time, we have one from Guamson Cruz, who says, if Poland goes to war, we should be able to easily supply them, at least right, because we're allies.
And I'd agree with that. We should be able to easily supply them with really no issues because, I mean, hell, they're connected to the rest of the European network and they're a NATO member using standardized NATO equipment. So I think we should be able to equip them and field them quite easily. But the Poles kind of do that on their own already. So we'd really just be giving them a little bit of extra oomph to their step that they already got. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to, let's see, let's see, Jay Backwell actually says something in the live chat here. He said, Enforcer Matt Enforcer, yes, you shot an LMT piston gun. It's the Estonian R20, and sorry, I'm a little bit behind. Oh, we did shoot that gun, actually. I'll be honest with you. I forgot that we even shot that gun. to be perfectly honest with you. But I do remember it now. But Enforcer, what say you?
Oh man, and that was a fun day, Jay. By the way, that was really fun to shoot those.
It was.
And I really loved the Elcan scope that he had on it that went from 1 times magnification to 2 times. It was really cool. And so I got to thank you for that, and thank you for sharing that with us because I was thinking, I was like, I remember correctly that was a short stroke gas piston, and it's good to know that it was. And also, funny story. I actually, Matthew, remember that I came home with like that welt on my lip, on like the left side of my face, like the upper lip. From that day.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh man, so I got a funny story to share with everyone. This was hilarious to me. So I ended up busting my lip that day because Jay had a Steyr AUG and he was like, "Hey, you want to shoot it?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure," because I thought Steyr AUGs really cool. I still think they're kind of cool, but really only the ones with the original optic, the 1.5 times optic or something like that. It's literally just a piece of glass pretty much on top of the AUG, but still, it's like, oh yeah, that'd be cool. I'd like to shoot it. So brings his AUG over, and we both didn't realize it, but I'm a left-handed shooter, and it's set up to where it ejects the shells for a right-handed shooter, or more so the cartridges for a right-handed shooter. So it's ejecting right onto my face and right onto my lip, and so I sat there, pulled the trigger, and this burning hot 5.56 cartridge came flying out of that open, came flying out, and it smacked me right on the lip because my lip was literally right on top of the opening. So it hit so hard, it busted my lip, and then I just had to sit there for a second. I was like, I think I just got hurt. I was like, I don't know what happened, and then I looked down and I realized that the opening to the whole entire receiver for the cartridge to come out was right there on my lip. So I busted my lip that day because of that. It was fine. We just ran the stream that night, no problem. I just had a slightly busted lip. But that was still hilarious because I get a laugh thinking about that because I remember when it happened, I just kind of flinched just really quickly for just a brief second. And then I got up and I was like, oh. I'm like, hey, I think this thing's actually for a right-handed shooter. And then Jay was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And then I shot it right-handed because I learned quick. I really learned quick after that because I don't want to bust my lip twice. But still, that was an extremely funny story from that day. I still get a laugh thinking about that. But still, thank you so much for letting me shoot all those rifles, Jay. It was incredibly fun. I got a fun story to tell from that whole thing because busting the lip. I've never done that before with a rifle. That was the first time I'd ever done it, and I got a huge laugh out of it. Now, I've cut myself plenty with rifles and everything that comes with them, but busting my lip, that was a new one. I gotta say, that was funny to me. So with that, I hope that does address it well. Thank you for clarifying that, Jay. And it sounds like I did get everything dead on the nail from what you pretty much taught me, Jay Bagwell. Because in case y'all didn't know, Jay Bagwell was the amazing friend of the channel that we went shooting with that taught me so much about the difference in between short stroke gas piston ARs and the actual direct impingement ARs. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that did address that well, Jay Bagwell. And thank you so much for coming in and clarifying a little bit more. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Margaret Hemsley, who says, if Europe declares war preemptively, will the USA become involved or just give supplies because NATO is a defensive alliance?
It depends on why they get involved. If they get involved in retaliation of some sort of a Russian action against them, we probably will join in, because it is a defensive alliance after all. But if they just stepped in and did something on their own, I don't think we will join them, unless if they started to get attacked on their own territory. And even then, I'm not really sure, because we may say, because they were a belligerent in a war, and this is a retaliatory action against a belligerent, then that means that the NATO Article 4, 5, and 6, which really all pertain to the actual defense of a NATO member state, do not apply to them. So maybe that's the way it would work. I'm not exactly sure. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to, let's see how, it goes to Kaltenberg, who says, do you think France is so uppity regarding Russia because of what Wagner is doing in former French African colonies?
Hang on, reread that again. I'm so sorry, man. I'm having to reread so many of them, but for some reason they're not clicking for me. So could you reread it again, please?
Kaltenberg says, do you think that France is so uppity that regarding Russia because of what Wagner is doing in former French African colonies?
Former French African colonies? What are you talking about, Altenburg? They're current French colonies. They just run under different names.
Does anyone know that actually on this channel? Like how deeply involved France is in a lot of the French former colonies? Like they may as well run them like colonies still. It's actually kind of unique how they do that. But yes, I think that's why they may be getting very violent, because the Russians are actually coming in. So what the French consider to be their own turf, Kaltenberg, you've got a good assessment there. They're coming into what the French believe is their own turf in Western Africa, and they're messing with the French forces there, and they're also messing with really French administration in these areas. So I would have to say, yeah, that may be why they're acting uppity. That may be why they are really starting to get on out there with how they're reacting to the Russians. And that may be an instigation to them. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And also, I don't know why, Matthew, but I always thought that Casablanca was like a fictitious place until like a few years ago when I actually found out Casablanca is an actual city in Morocco. Just a small side.
It's in Morocco. It's expensive.
I don't know. Let's go check it out. That looks expensive. I'm not gonna lie. Let's see here. Oh, I like the little motorcycle moped looking thing. I like that. Looks pretty nice actually. It looks pretty high end down here in Casablanca. There was a movie called Casablanca that came out in 1942, by the way, and that's how a lot of Americans know about the city of Casablanca. But beyond that, pretty cool. But with that, I don't know why I went down that rabbit hole. I just saw, all the stuff. But with that, we are going to be moving on into the second to last question of the night.
And this one is going to go to Ronnie, who says, do you guys think that the EU NATO countries push this hard so that if war will break out, it's better to start it now? Ends.
I don't think it's better to start, well, that's a tough one. It's like a philosophical argument about starting the inevitable now or waiting for it to inevitably start later. I don't really know how to answer that, because starting it now may be a little preemptive. There may be a way to smooth it over where it doesn't actually happen. And we may miss that opportunity if we start a war now. Or we could wait for the war to happen later, if it ever does. Me personally, I would say we probably should wait for the Russians to make the first move, so that way it is truly a defensive war, instead of us preemptively striking them and trying to make it sound like a defensive war, because that's what the Russians did to Ukraine, technically, is that they said the Ukrainians were planning on doing something, so we struck them early. Well, at least at the beginning of war, that's what they went with, and then they went with a million other theories of biolabs and all kinds of crazy crap. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. I think we should honestly wait instead of preemptively starting something just because we think it's inevitable. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Angel Hernandez, who says, in case of a war with Russia, how will NATO will win the war, since Russia has stated that they will use nuclear weapons if anyone invaded his territory?
Well, it's a good question. We would probably try and find a way to make a status quo antebellum agreement. That is a French term. Sorry, whoops. It's not French, it's Latin. Status quo antebellum means that everything goes back to the way it was before the war started. And so that means that the Russians would recognize the 1991 borders of Ukraine. The West would not impose anything humiliating to the Russians. They would be able to save face. The war would end, probably in a short amount of time, because that's really the only way it can end without nuclear weapons being used and really everyone losing in the end. Because it's not like we don't have nukes. We have nukes as well. If the Russians launch their nukes, we launch our nukes, both on the battlefield and both on a strategic sense. And so, going off of that kind of an idea, there isn't really no way that the Russians would win that war. It would be a lose-lose for everyone at that point. So I have a feeling that once a large conventional war broke out, we would probably see the negotiators sweating violently for the next few weeks, trying to figure out a way to come up with a status quo antebellum agreement. That's most likely what would happen. But that's just my opinion on it. It could go all the way to nuclear weapons being used and then Armageddon and all that stuff. But with that, I hope that does address that quite well, and it is time for us to end. I got to thank everyone so much for watching tonight. It's been an absolute honor getting to run the stream. At the peak, there were 8,000 people here live, and nearly 65,000 people have viewed this stream before it rounded out tonight, I gotta say that we are entirely appreciative and thankful for each and every one of y'all watching. It is always an honor to be able to run the stream for y'all, and if y'all have enjoyed it and you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, make sure to like, and make sure to comment, after this thing becomes a video, because it helps this channel to just keep on running. It helps us to reach more people, and it helps more people to know about what we do here on this channel. But with that, we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And so with that, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And good night, folks. Thank you all for another great stream tonight. And be sure to join us tomorrow as well for our short war summary during the midday, and also our stream again at night at 10 p.m. Eastern. A very good time indeed. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, and good night. We'll see you all tomorrow.
Yes. The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.